Hello, YouTube. Welcome to episode 5 of Wizard and Glass. Here in the lovely month of September, we were just discussing on the hangout yesterday how September is just one of the best months. You know, you get finally get rid of the summer heat, starting to cool into the nice, beautiful fall, which is the superior season. I mean,
yeah, fall's the best.
I mean, yeah, fall, best weather, Halloween, all kinds of fun stuff.
Spooky season.
Yes, indeed. So, we're here for this episode. I think let's just go ahead and hit the intro and dive right in.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are Ka-Tet, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower series, as well as the wider King universe. My name is Tad.
I'm Peter.
And we're here for round book club number 5 for for Wizard and Glass. We've done way more round tables, so it's easy to slip into that. I think at one point we were wondering what the actual total of book clubs was. I still need to add that up. I know we hit about 25 or 26 for the last book, which is the first real sizable book. So assuming all the others are under that, we're under 100 episodes for book clubs. So versus 140 something round tables. we're getting up there for 141 will be next episode. So we've got a healthy lead on round tables. But first of all, we don't have any spoiler warning because this is a book club. We stay where we're at or before. We have a spoiler section at the very end, but you will be warned both visually and with your audibly if you are on the podcast side before we move into that, and it will be very isolated to the very end. If you want to find the podcast, you can do that any number of ways on Apple Podcasting, Spotify. Apparently Stitcher is going away, so no longer Stitcher. I think they're about to close up shop.
Oh, really?
But any podcasting service, including Amazon Music and Audible. I don't know what the date is on Stitcher, but I've been seeing some people talking about Stitcher going away. So I think it's maybe it's even already gone. But then if you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those services, we'd appreciate that. And if you want to join us live on the live streams, you can do that over at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. We come every other week to record episodes. We alternate between book clubs and roundtables. They release in the podcast feed as they always do. But if you want to be part of the conversation live with us, you can find us over here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver, as well as you can go back and watch all the old live streams dating back to when we began. Of course, you won't be able to engage live, but you can still watch, if you want to see Peter's reactions.
For when Tad is terrible.
Any of that fun stuff, you can do that over here. If you are here on the YouTube, if you want to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, that will alert you if anything changes. If we change days or times or weeks, whatever it is, the notifications are always awesome. Plus, sometimes you might just forget that we're about to go live, and then you get a notification on your phone. I know I've got one on my phone now, even though I don't think it'll ever stream without me knowing. I would hope not, unless Skynet has taken over. Then if you want to find the show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com, as well as that as a hub for all things Dark Tower Palaver. We don't really have show notes for the book club episodes, but you can find all of our past show notes, as well as you can find the questions for new listeners. If you are a new listener and you want to email in an introduction, those questions are a good little primer. You can answer one of them or all of them or anything in between. And it has all of our links for everything Dark Tower Palaver could be found over there at darktowerpalaver.com. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We do monthly hangouts, which we just did one yesterday afternoon, about 24 hours ago. We finished up. And we also have our Discord server where you can chat with us all the time throughout the week. which is always fun. Never know what kind of shenanigans is going to go on there. You know, a lot of Holly talk, you know, on Holly Day, which was what was that,
Tuesday,
4 days ago. Or something like that. I think it was the 5th, wasn't it? Yes, it was the 5th. So 4 days ago from today, I think we're all enjoying that. I would assume. I know I am. So yeah. And then if you want to contact the show, you can do that any number of ways that Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
Best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com, or we have our new email, show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then check out our Twitter. It's @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. We have our Instagram. It's darktowerpalaver, all one word with no spaces. And then you can check out our merchandise. It's at tpublic.com/user/darktowerpalaver. Go pick yourself up a #TadIsTerrible shirt, sticker,
or just
hoodie, pillow. There's a whole bunch of different stuff.
Or the classic logo, you know, that doesn't get into the slander element of all things.
It's not slander, sir.
Oh, indeed. Indeed it is.
No, we talked about this. If it's written, it's liable, right?
Well, it's all false.
No.
It's all false.
No.
We should get a Tad is Lovable t-shirt to go along with the other side of it. All right. So, yeah, that is the intro stuff. Calendar-wise, we did want to announce here, in case you are a book club exclusive listener, we did get backwards. Usually the book clubs are the second episode of the month, but because of the 3-episode month of July, and now that we have moved to the every other episode book club roundtable cadence, that has thrown it backwards, but we will actually be flipping that back in October because we are going to be having a show on the road for the first episode on the 7th. So the next 2 episodes straight are going to be roundtables. If you're a book club person strictly, you will not see us again until the 21st of October, 10 days before Halloween, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite holiday, I would imagine.
It's my favorite, so.
I mean, you've got candy, you've got costumes, you got spooky decorations. I mean, there's just, and it's fall. Like, you know, Halloween would not hit the same if it were like in like July 31st. It's like 100-degree weather. Like, no.
Yeah, you imagine trying to go out there in some of those costumes in that weather.
Yeah, no thanks. I probably wouldn't.
We were actually just talking about that the other day, where you were always mad as a kid when your mom would make you wear a jacket because it ruined the aesthetic of your costume.
Oh yeah, indeed. And every time that I had a costume that allowed me to like sneak not wearing a jacket, like I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll wear it underneath. Then I wouldn't, and, you know, because if it was a big enough costume, which as a kid I probably should have thought about the fact that if it's big enough to hide that I don't have a jacket, it probably won't be noticeable if I had a jacket.
Yeah.
But hey, I got sick a few times on Halloween, but who cares? it was all for the art of the costume.
And it's the best time to be sick because then you stay home the first week of November eating your candy.
Eat all the candy, indeed. Indeed. All right, so yeah, that is the calendar announcement stuff. So let's go ahead and look at where we are in book 4. I almost said 5 because chapter 5 is on my screen here. So we are indeed in chapter 5. Which is called Turnpikin. It is we have 4 parts to this book that we are at the very tail end of part 1, which is titled Riddles. I believe next episode we are going to be completing the rest of chapter 5 and moving into part 2. We may not have an exact episode, though. We may actually be crossing over into part 2 next episode.
All right.
So I was looking at that a little bit. We'll see how this one goes. But yeah, so that's where we're at. We are part 1, Riddles, chapter 5, Turnpikin, and we are starting at sub-chapter 2. Where we left off, we had a pretty good line from Stephen King. Let's see. I don't know if I can actually find it because I was just accidentally went to the very beginning where it shows the thing. But it says something about Jake had the start of his life as they entered Gage Park. So, yeah, King, of course, left us on a little bit of a cliffhanger there.
Yep.
We've also found that no matter what we do, it seems like we always end up finding those really wonderful cliffhangers when we end episodes. We don't do it on purpose.
It just happens.
It's just the way it works out. I will say mathematically, though, King puts a lot of those at the end of subchapters. I think it's a way to draw people in to continue reading. I know that. I've been dragged by the nose to losing mass amounts of sleep over
You're
my
like,
life.
all right, I'm going to finish this subchapter and I'm going to go to bed. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I got to go to school tomorrow. And then it's like, you finish the subchapter, you're like, well, fuck, I can't leave it there.
Stop it there. Yeah, there was a number of times in high school that I remember being up till 2, 3 in the morning reading, because every time I'd get to where I'm like, I have to stop here. I get to that last bit of the chapter or subchapter, and I'm just like, you motherfucker. To Stephen King, I'm like, you bastard. But I love that, though. That's good memories. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Let's go ahead and dive into subchapter 2. And then Heil to Baraki and Dirty Mike in the chat. Also, Baraki gave me a hashtag Tat is terrific. See, that's a t-shirt. That's what we need to get there.
No one would buy it.
I'd buy one for you.
I wouldn't wear it. No way.
Oh, man. All right, so jumping into subchapter 2, they passed the iron gates of Gage Park, which was overgrown from months of no maintenance or upkeep. There was an old carousel that gave Jake the creeps. The overgrowth was so thick that before long they were forced into single file, and the thorns are pulling at Jake's clothes. And he was in the lead because Roland was still sewing his head. Because I guess we could have mentioned that as well. Roland is getting a little swoony. He almost fainted at one point on top of Blaine. Mm-hmm. The sounds that they're hearing that sound Hawaiian are definitely putting Roland in his head quite a bit. So then moving on, it says Jake was in the lead. Jake in the lead was the first to see Charlie the Choo-Choo. Oh, goodness to Christ, all came out of Jake's mouth in one word, and the strength ran out of his legs, and he sat down. They all tried to see what was wrong with Jake, and they all fell silent as they saw him. 50 feet up by the toy station that looked like the real one across the street was Charlie with the cow catcher and all. Jake is certain that there would be mice living in the guy where the guy, certainly named Bob, who ran the train, would sit. Roland and Eddie help Jake up as his mind is reeling from seeing the real Charlie the Choo-Choo. Eddie says he doesn't blame him. Susanna figures that this is where Beryl Evans got her idea for the book. Jake was relieved that the Tet had understood his feeling. As only a child that was not familiar, as only the only child that may not be familiar with such things, Jake remembered the dream with Oi and the track and picked him up and as they continued on, which I love that. Just like,
I know my dream. I'm not doing this.
I'm not leaving him on the track. Jake talked to Charlie and said he's not afraid of him. The light flashed briefly on like it was accusing him of lying, and then he left and went on. He's the only one that saw it. His heart was thumping as he ran after his companions. So the one thing I always think of here in retrospect now, it wasn't at the time, but when it talks about like the small station that looks like the big station is Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
You know, at the small town.
Tiny town.
Yeah, yeah. Or, of course, Hot Fuzz, classic movie that also has a small town. But that's what I think. I mean, Hot Fuzz is probably what I thought of more in the real time when I was reading it. But since then, Stephen King has now added into that pantheon to where I always think of that.
Especially because Tiny Town not only has like the model of the town, but it also has the train.
It does have the train.
Ride,
it does have the train too. Yeah. Have you ever seen that in real life? Like a place that does like a replica of themselves, like a smaller thing. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's very popular in like smaller towns and stuff like that. And I saw one in Colorado and one in Idaho. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Wonder if there's a little Stanley somewhere out there. Stanley Hotel.
Only if I could take a croquet mallet to it.
Do you want a croquet mallet anywhere in the vicinity of that hotel?
I mean, it's not going to bother me. I'm not staying there, so.
Okay, so my notes here: kid stuff in an abandoned setting always creeps me out or unsettles me. Like the real life images of the kid stuff in Pripyat in the Chernobyl exclusionary zone are just super eerie. They've actually played that up in video games and movies and stuff over the years. Just having that area that's so overgrown because humans haven't been there in 40 years, but also just, I don't know. It's like it's also an abandoned amusement park. I remember when I first heard the I just blanked on the name. It's not Revival. What's the theme amusement park one?
Joyland.
Joyland. I remember when that got announced. I was like, okay, Kane taking on that. Yeah, that's gonna work because like those are just inherently creepy. And I think the only thing that makes them not creepy is having everyone around you. So then when you remove everyone, there's just I mean rides and there's like all the carny stuff. It's creepy.
Yeah.
So
no, and that's here that's my note is abandoned parks, amusement parks included, are one of the creepiest things to me. It's
Yeah.
like, even like in the Dark Tower movie, we got that with the shot of basically was like an abandoned amusement park, just like overgrown by centuries of plant growth. It's creepy as hell.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's kind of like that clown thing where, you know, the reason people tend to be scared of clowns is what they've found with studies is that they're so unreal. And it's the same reason really small kids are scared of Santa Claus too, right? It's like chances are they've never seen anyone that looks like that. So, I mean, maybe a kid has a grandpa that has a big beard, and I bet you those kids are less scared of Santa Claus. But Santa Claus kind of looks inhuman to, like, if you think of like a really small kid, like the normal humans they see day to day.
That's not day-to-day human look. That's something else. That's the same thing with like the Easter Bunny. You go to get your picture taken with the Easter Bunny, and the kids freak out. It's like, it's just a person in a costume. Like, what are you freaking out about?
Have you seen that one from Russia, though?
Yes. I freak out at that.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's give the kids credit that there is sometimes that it can be really creepy. But I will say, I think maybe that like non-normal, non-humanish thing is really what, I mean, you know, theme parks and those kind of things, like, or parks like this are so very, like, animated that they're kind of creepy, but you lose it in the context of normality. So when you remove that, it's like, God, that's fucking creepy.
Like, there's just something about an empty park in general. Like I've driven past parks in the middle of summer. It's 6 o'clock at night on a July night, and I'm just like, why is there no one at this park? What the fuck? Am I the last person on earth? You know, like, and then I see someone walking their dog, and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, it's just like, it's not supposed to be empty, but it is because it's like too hot or something like that. And then they look creepy in the winter too because they're just covered in snow. Yeah. Or it's, even if it's not snowy, it's just abandoned because it's too cold to go out and play. And it's just, it's desolate and it's creepy. There should be kids there, and when there's not kids there, something's off.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, with a theme park, imagine there's no one there, but all the sounds are still going.
Oh, yeah, that's no. That's a no for me. I'm out.
Then, of course, Charlie appears. Insult to injury for King to drop this on our Tet in general and Jake in specific.
Yeah, and my note here is just, he really hates this kid, doesn't he? Like, let's just we've physically abused him. We've emotionally abused him. Now let's just one more emotional little mwah at the end of it, just to cherry on top for the kid.
I'd say drop a brick on him, but that's a little bit too
on the nose.
Yeah, for this story.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'd be able to get away with that in any other story, but not here. But yeah, so that is subchapter 2.
So moving into subchapter 3, they're walking through the world-famous Topeka Zoo. According to the signs, that is. They see lots of empty cages and dead animals. Some of the animals that were freed were gone, but others had died near to hand. The big apes were still in the area marked gorilla habitat, and they appeared to have died hand in hand. This makes Eddie feel like crying somehow, and ever since he had washed heroin out of his system, his emotions always seemed to be on the verge of blowing up into a cyclone. His old pals would have laughed. Beyond the gorilla habitat is a gray wolf dead on the path. Oi approached it carefully and sniffs it. Then he stretched out his long neck and starts to howl. Eddie says to make him quit it, and that he realized he can smell decaying animals. The aroma is faint. After all, the hot summer days has made it kind of like faint, not like pungent and everything like that.
Yeah.
But it still made him feel like throwing up. Not that he could remember the last time that he had eaten. Jake calls Oi to me. Oi howled one last time and then returns to Jake and stands on Jake's feet looking up at him with those, quote, spooky wedding ring eyes. Jake picks him up and circles the wolf and sets him down. The path leads them to a steep set of steps with weeds already poking through the cracks. At the top, Roland looks back over and can see the whole zoo and the gardens. From there, they can see the circuit the train made around the edge of Gage Park. Fallen leaves clatter down Gage Boulevard before a cold wind. Roland says, "So fell Lord Perth," and Jake finishes, and the countryside did shake with that thunder. Roland looks down at him in surprise, like a man waking from a deep sleep. He smiles, puts his arm around Jake's shoulders, and says he has played Lord Perth in his time. And Jake asks, "Have you?" And Roland says, "Yes, and soon you shall hear." So my first note is very sad about the animals. Must have really stunk really bad in the height of the summer. Reminds me of what Larry said about New York in the stand. Just like, we got to get out of here. Like, it's going to stink really bad. It's going to be like disease and everything like that. So it's just reminding me of that this happened not just here, but everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. It's just like one of those ones that are just like, oh.
Yeah, King doesn't cover it a lot in The Stand,
Yeah.
but there's a few different times where they talk about like the growing familiarity with like with decay, essentially. Especially as you get into the second half of the book, it's like
clearing out the church and everything like that. They start talking about
not
like,
even them, just the normal people that are doing day-to-day life and walking around. Like there's
Yeah.
a few times where somebody points out the fact where it's like, you know what, I'm not really smelling it much anymore, but I know it's still there. Like
Yeah.
we've all basically grown accustomed to decay. The people going to the church, that was like so concentrated that I think most of them.
What I was saying is like the first time going to the church, they had issues where people were throwing up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on second day and the third day and the fourth day, all of a sudden they're able to get through a lot more and handle it a little bit better. Whereas like you were saying, even like day-to-day life, they weren't noticing it as much. And part of it had to go with that they were cleaning up. So
Yeah. I also threw a slide up for you there, sir.
threw a slide up for me. Oi.
Since we were talking about his eyes and all there.
Yeah.
So interesting that Oi either recognizes the wolf as a wolf and mimic the howl, or he recognizes it as a close relative and is mourning its death. I'm not sure which it is, because it's like we're talking about we're in our world now. So it's like either there's wolves in Roland's world and they're the same as there, and so Oi recognizes it as Repla or whatever, or there is just some weird like instinctual thing where he understands it's something that's not far from him relation-wise. That's an interesting thing, though. I don't think we've seen Oi like emote like that before. We've seen him talk. We've seen him make noises. We've seen him like even try to copy like like motions and stuff. But like howling, that's
the first. It's like finding out that a fox could howl. Like foxes don't howl. Wolves and dogs howl.
I've never had a dog
Foxes
that
don't.
howled either.
No?
Ever. No. Because I've seen even a few reels where people have like little puppies and they'll like make noises to like cause it to howl, and I'm like, I have never in my entire life had a dog that howled for some reason. I don't know why. Not that I would want it. I've heard that dogs that do howl can get really annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just never had one over the years.
Especially the ones that howl at like the fire trucks when they.
Yeah.
Because you have a fire station that lives right over here next to you. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen those like reels and stuff too, where it'll be like a German Shepherd or something in the backyard, and then a siren starts going, and then it starts to howl. Like, yeah, no, it's just an interesting addition to Oi, because I don't think we've seen something. I mean, God, have we even really seen him like bark? Like, it feels like he's always barking words, but like, have we heard him just bark? I don't know. That's
yeah, he's given a couple barks.
Or yeah, he's barking on the train tracks in the dream, I guess, if nothing else.
But also, like he's barked a couple times, like in defense of Jake, because like when he goes after TikTok Man, he's barking and
when he tries
growling
to punt
and
him,
stuff like that. Yeah,
when he tries to.
No, not Gasher.
TikTok
Man.
yeah.
When he comes out of the vent.
Oh yeah, I
like
see
that.
what you mean. Yeah.
There's in the if I remember right in the description, it's talking about how he's barking and snarling, which is very dog-like.
Yeah,
so.
I'd say growling and snarling I have a lot of images in my head for, but barking just not as much. I feel like it's always like an ache. Like he's like talking, and it's like a bark, but not like we get a lot of like dog barking from him, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. And also, my other note here, Lord Perth is a perfect analogy for the Captain Trips Fallen World.
Yeah.
Because Lord Perth is obviously mighty big, and as we know, our world at the time of Captain Trips was quite advanced and large.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know. I mean, Roland marveled in earlier books at like our buildings and stuff. You know, because it's insane. It's huge. So
yeah. Baraki puts it in the chat. Canopsia. The eerie, forlorn atmosphere of a place that's usually bustling with people, but is now abandoned and quiet, by the way.
Yeah, and I think that almost gets into like the liminal space stuff. You know, you see those where like somebody creates like a video thing where it's like in like a hotel, but the halls just keep going on. Because it's just, there's some alien nature to like most of those public places.
You ever accidentally walked into a place or like been around a place that's closing and you're like, there's normally people here. Like, this is so eerie.
Yeah, I was in Vegas at one point, and a cabana caught on fire, and they ended up shutting the strip down to get fire trucks there,
and no traffic on the strip.
And yeah, you're talking that's like 8 lanes wide or something. It's something massive, and there's usually just cars everywhere. And then suddenly there wasn't cars. I mean, there's people all over, but it wasn't like COVID. But this is a couple years before that. But it was like, whoa! Like I've gone to Vegas a number of times in my life, and to look at the strip not being like door to door, bumper to bumper cars
Yeah.
across the fucking way. Suddenly it was empty, and I was able to just walk out in the middle. I was like, this is really weird.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
unnatural.
Yeah, I've been in a store one time and I thought they locked me in because I was like, you guys are closed? They're like, no, we're open for another 10 minutes. I'm like, I have to grab one thing, so I went all the way to the back of the store, and then the lights like started to turn off, and I'm like, oh no, they lied to me. Like they're gonna lock.
Well, you
me
remember
in the
we used to
store.
do that to people in our first job, that little grocery
We would
store.
turn off certain lights.
Because there was those, asshole people that would show up 5 minutes before and they'd start shopping for, they'd be shopping for 40 minutes. So they'd end up holding us 30, 40
Yep.
minutes over our quitting time. So we'd just start shutting all the lights off and stuff, everything but the emergency lights, which you couldn't shut off.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'd have the manager would just mad dog them, would just stand at the end of the aisle staring at them, glaring at them and shit.
Yeah.
Fucking assholes.
Yeah, hated people like that. My last note here is that this is just again Roland again already. We're in subchapter 3 of this part, and he's already saying, "Yep, you're gonna hear it. You're gonna hear the story. Don't worry about it." It's like constantly reassuring us that we're gonna hear it. Also, the Ka-Tet itself that they're gonna hear it as well.
Yeah, indeed. So subchapter 4, moving on to subchapter 4, beyond the steps was a dead aviary full of all manner of dead birds. And I guess it's far enough along now. I doubt there's a lot of color involved here. It's probably just a lot of bird skeletons. Not necessarily like, a couple days after they all died. That would be maybe a beautiful death.
Yeah.
A bunch of colors and all kinds of stuff.
All the brightly colored birds.
Yeah.
But yeah. It would not. Oh, that's not a pretty picture.
Beyond that, there was a snack bar, perhaps heartlessly advertising Topeka's best buffalo burger. And beyond the snack bar was another wrought iron arch with a sign saying "Come back soon." And beyond that was a curved upslope of a highway entrance ramp and a green sign they spotted earlier. That they had spotted earlier, the interstate sign. I don't still have that slide, but we did show it. Eddie says to himself, "Turnpikin again," and Jake asks what he means. Eddie does not answer for a long time and starts by saying it does not make him look good. And he says, quote, "Not much about my life before Gary Cooper here ranked me across the Great Divide was," which that's great. Then Jake tries to tell him he doesn't have to tell, but Eddie interrupts and tells him it is no big deal and explains what it meant. He says a bunch of his friends would get together and draw a name out of a hat, and whoever was drawn was the trip guide, and that person had to stay sober, or relatively at least, while everyone else got seriously goobered. And that's a direct quote there. And they got into a car and went up I-95 to Connecticut or upstate New York, listening to Creedence or Marvin Gaye or Elvis. He says it was better at nights and best with a full moon. They would cruise for hours and sometimes sticking their heads out the windows like dogs. He smiled with, hereditary. You probably shouldn't do that. He smiled with an effort and called it a charming life. Jake says it sounded fun, not the drug part, but it's the riding around with friends and looking at the moon and listening to music. Eddie says that it was, but they were so high it was both excellent and horrible. Roland says, "Let's do some turnpiking," and they left the park. So a little bit of an insight into what Eddie's life looked like. We've had a couple images here and there throughout, but I think this is maybe one of the more unremarkable looks at his life, like kind of what normal life might look like. We've seen
a weekend excursion kind of thing. They do this all the time.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Not like, oh, hey, you just got roped into going and smuggling drugs into the fucking country.
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, I just feel like some of the other things we've seen were like outlying things of like, holy shit, these are like standalone or big moments.
The big fight with Henry where he's like, how it ended up with Eddie starting heroin for the first time. Is that the big fight with Henry, and finally the neighbor had to come out and tell him to shut up and everything.
Yeah.
Big moments like that. His sister dying, going to Dutch Hill. But this is just a glimpse into his everyday life. Like them deciding to go turnpiking.
Yeah.
Hey, I got some money. I'll chip in some gas. Let's go turnpiking this weekend. It's like, oh, yeah. Hey, yeah.
I can never think see the Creedence referred to as just Creedence without thinking of the Big Lebowski, though.
Yeah.
So this is quite a place. We don't have anything like this in our neck of the woods. A park with a ride or two, animals, an aviary, and a snack bar. I mean, we have like a park that has an aviary. God, do we have anything that really even has rides outside of like an actual theme park?
The big difference for us, especially for this, and my note ties in with that, is that this is right next to the Topeka Zoo. So for us, when we look at it, we have like the Hogle Zoo here in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
That has a train, that has a carousel and stuff like that inside of the zoo.
Yeah.
This seems like Topeka just maybe has a split into Gage Park and then the zoo.
Yeah.
But the aviary would just be part of like the zoo. I mean, like we talked about it in the last subchapter that I covered. We had, gorillas and wolves and stuff like that. So like actual zoo, and then we have just like this little park that has like a little toy train that kids can ride and stuff like that. It is interesting to think about. I have been to little zoos that have stuff like this. Like I went up to a zoo in Idaho one time with my family, having a family reunion. There was a zoo next door to the park where we were having it.
Oh yeah.
It cost like $1 to get in, and there was like 17 animals. And that was it.
I don't think I've been to the zoo in 15 years. I should probably go at some point.
At some point you should.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Plus, that's how I ended up with the stuffed penguin. Looking around for all old Fluffy there. I was just thinking about it recently, though. You referred to Fluffy, and I think some people could confuse that with Fluffy from Creepshow.
Yeah, the first Fluffy that I was ever introduced to was Tad's stuffed penguin that he brought home from the zoo after a date was named Fluffy. He would hide it around in this in this house. We used to live in this house together.
It's shown up on the show too.
It has showed up. Was it on this one or was it on Geekery Abides?
You're looking around. I love it.
I don't trust it.
Oh man. My next note: buffalo burgers are extremely delicious. By the way,
I haven't had one in, I would easily say 15 years.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
They're quite delicious.
We need to go up to Park City. There's that bar up there that does buffalo burgers.
No Name Saloon. I mean, there's a number of places that do, but No Name Saloon's where I went to one.
Is there a place in Vegas that does buffalo burgers?
I don't know. Maybe. We'll have to look.
Yeah.
Jake, of course, finds the idea of Turnpikin fun because, sadly, we were told he never really had a lot of friends. So
yeah.
I'm guessing that's probably what he latched onto is the idea of just, like, hanging out with friends for hours at a time.
He's probably picturing the Ka-Tet doing it.
Yeah.
Like Eddie driving, Susanna in the front seat, him and Roland and Oi in the back seat, just having snacks and driving. He probably thinks that's a hell of a good time.
But as I'm analyzing this, it just strikes me as a tiny bit sad that Jake finds this so appealing because it's been a while. But yeah, remember, he has like only 2 people that even came close. And even then, it was like it would be a stretch to call either of them friends. They were like the closest acquaintances he had. There was just 2 of them. Everyone else at the school, he was just kind of alien to.
Yeah.
So this poor kid is not a social butterfly.
No, and I put down that dude, Turnpikin sounds amazing. Like just getting with a group of friends,
except for the drugs.
Except for the drugs.
You're like Jake.
Yeah, I'm like Jake. I just want the friends and driving around having a good time.
Yeah. What about in the full moon?
Should we, as long as we stay in populated areas and don't go into the woods.
Should we go drive up into the Ozarks?
No.
Next full moon?
No.
Why not?
No.
Could be fun.
That's where the Ozark Howler is.
Or not Ozarks. I'm sorry, the Uintas. Ozarks is a fucking back east.
That's Arkansas.
Yeah, Uintas. I'm talking the Uintas.
No. That's Bigfoot territory.
Yeah, it certainly is, apparently. If you believe in such things, the high Uintas are a good place to find such beasts.
And if there's not Bigfoot, there's damn sure going to be some kind of a beastie out there waiting for me.
Some hungry animal. Hey, what's wrong with getting a flat up there in the high Uintas while we're
a lot of things are wrong with that. Don't even. In the high Uintas, that's bear country too.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Heil Allen, catching up on the chat here. I've been losing sight here, but yeah, Heil.
Yeah. So we're on to subchapter 5 now already. Someone spray painted over both signs marking the ramp ascending curve, and on the one reading St. Louis 215.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I did have a slide. Because I actually wanted to show the real train at Gage Park.
Oh, shit. There is actually like a train and everything like that at Gage Park.
Yeah, so I went to Gage Park.
I don't know if King just made that up or not. I've never looked into it.
Yeah, so I went to Gage Park's website, and this was pulled straight from their website. So there is indeed a train there in Gage Park.
That's is that going to be a pilgrimage for us at some point, too?
Maybe.
Maybe. Go get a picture of us on Charlie the Choo Choo. Does it have a name? Did you see?
I think I looked. I can't remember if it actually did or not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. It's not Charlie, at least.
Okay.
So,
otherwise, you would have made note.
Oh yeah, I looked around. I'm like, is it called Charlie? Is it called Charlie?
You're like, please,
come on, or at least Blaine. Call it something that I like. But it did not.
All right. So there's some spray paint. Looks like some graffiti on One side that says St. Louis 215, someone had slashed "Watch for the walking dude in black," and on the one marked "Next rest area 10 mile, all hail the Crimson King" had been written in fat red letters, and the Scarlet was still bright enough to scream even after an entire summer. Each had been decorated with a symbol, which was an eye. Susanna asks if Roland knows what any of that truck means. Roland shakes his head, but looks troubled, and introspective look never left his own eyes. So that's it for subchapter 5. The whole thing's just about the graffiti.
Yeah.
And my note here is the Crimson King mentioned at all in the stand? I looked it up and I didn't seem like there was anything in there.
No, I don't believe there is any, even any allusion to him.
Okay.
It's a wonderful world where flag is the height of all things of the red.
No.
So,
yeah. Oh, yeah, and then there's the graffiti on the slide there.
Yeah, I was not impressed by what King had in the book there for the second one, so I found a real thing there. You know what I couldn't find, though? Remember they had those publicity photos that had that "All Hail the Crimson King" in the eye? And then for the movie, because in the movie you actually saw Jake, like, go up and see that wall, and I think you even see Flag go by it and rub his finger across it. I couldn't find that original image that they released way before the movie, or it was just
really?
the wall, because I wanted to throw that up, because I'm like, that's cool, because it is actually graffiti and stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, the only image I could find was a really small, shitty image of Jake standing in front of it, and he's blocking half the damn thing. So, yeah. But I wasn't super impressed. And I also couldn't find a Watch the Walking Dude. Nobody's animated that, which is somewhat troubling to me.
Watch for the walking dude.
On like an interstate sign. I was kind of disappointed that had nobody's artist that up. I even tried to get AI to do it. It didn't do well.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Oh man, yeah. And then my note. Of course, we're all familiar with and love the Walking Dude.
No, we don't love him.
He's awesome.
No,
he's a lovable character.
No.
Okay. So going over to subchapter 6, the Tet are clustered around Susanna's chair as they move from the ramp to the turnpike, all looking east. Eddie was not sure how the traffic would be once they were outside of Topeka, but all the lanes in both directions were jammed full with cars and trucks. Most vehicles are piled high with possessions gone rusty from at least a year's worth of rain. The city continued on for half a mile in either direction. They could see churches, fast food places, Boing Boing Burgers, the only one not familiar to them or us. Car dealerships, bowling alleys, and exit, saying hospital with a big red brick building that Eddie thought looked like Attica, which made him think it was probably not a great hospital. Beyond that, the city ended and the thinny began. So then my note here, traffic is a very familiar thing from the stand readers. Everyone is trying to get out of Dodge when the flu overcame them. Yeah. So that's actually a pretty big plot element in the middle portion of the book when people are traveling to either Nebraska or Las Vegas. Everyone has to deal with how are you going to do it? I mean, there's some people walk, some people use bicycles, some people use motorcycles.
Some people have wreckers.
Yeah, you have to do various things because all the roads are absolutely jammed up everywhere. So, very familiar for stand readers.
Yeah, and I put just crazy how people act during panics react. Some people think going into a big city is the answer, and other people think getting out is the smartest play. We saw that in the stand with like the Lincoln Tunnel and different towns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that both sides of the highway are clogged.
Yeah.
So,
you know, one thing I find interesting is, and I don't know if this speaks heavily into the stand, but the one thing that we never see here in this version of Topeka with Captain Trips is we don't see any military. In the stand, it's very common where you have like areas of military's blocked off exits and
the Lincoln Tunnel,
all over the place. The Lincoln Tunnel, the Eisenhower Tunnel. There's the bridges into New York, out of New York, like just they're all over it. So it's just that it's very interesting that they're absent here. So it's like, is this just like, are there areas that the military just doesn't try, or is it just that in this world maybe the military didn't? I don't know. It's just an interesting.
Or did the military already pull out of this area because it was infected? Think of like the Midwest, Kansas, just a couple states above Texas.
Yeah,
maybe that's where literally the ones you just gave the examples of are farther east and west than that.
Bigger, because they talk about, there's at least allusions to what LA looks like when Larry's calling back to people, and they're talking about all the soldiers everywhere and stuff. So military is very present throughout the stand, and this is just an interesting thing I didn't notice until this time reading it, where I was kind of looking for that, because I'm fresh off my stand reread. So I'm like, do they talk about any military barricades? Do they see any military vehicles? And I was like watching as we were doing the prep for this, and I couldn't. I'm like, no. And
I'm just wondering if maybe they pulled out by this point in the pandemic for Captain Trips. Maybe at this point they're like, all right, Kansas is added to the list of complete losses. Pull out. Yeah. And so they pull out all the troops and everything like that, because they did that in Texas. They started pulling troops back and setting up quarantine zones.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe that's it, is that they started pulling out, or it could have been that this is just one of those areas that the complete lack of discipline broke down early versus late, like some of the others.
Yeah, I think the reason that I think Baracky's saying the same kind of thing in the chat there. I think the only reason I'm not necessarily thinking in the same realm is because so much of what we saw in the military died. They got swept up in it, and they died at their watch stations. Mm-hmm. So I just wonder if
which would be like New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco that you're talking about would be late stage pandemic for Captain Trips. That would be right before Larry in New York finds Rita and stuff like that. That's that era of where it's their last stand. But think about the early stages would be Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas,
but
New Mexico.
Shoyo has been blockaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
but again, you don't see the dead soldiers, do you? You see people who tried to get past the dead soldiers who were gunned down in the ditch, but you don't see dead soldiers there because they pulled back. That's what I'm saying. It's like you don't see the dead soldiers draped over their guns and in the barricades and stuff like that. They had the facade of its road work, and then past that's where Nick sees the dead people in the ditch, and it's not soldiers that are dead. It's people who tried to get past the soldiers. They were gunned down and then unceremoniously thrown into the ditch. Yeah. So then the soldiers pulled back, like Baraki said, forming a new perimeter and expanding out. So that may be the reason why we don't see them in Topeka here, is that they're pulling back.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's interesting. We don't even see any signs of them, even like dead bodies that look like they've been shot. Like that's something that Roland would have latched on to if he would have seen
that's
that.
A gunshot. But then again, we're also not looking. Remember Roland at the station, he's like, there's no reason for us to go in there. They're not exactly pulling out corpses out of cars and inspecting them either.
Yeah. Let's see. Did you get your note then?
Yes.
Okay. So to Eddie, it looked like a flat water, talking about the thinny now, looked like flat water standing in a vast marshland. It crowded up to the raised barrels of I-70 on both sides, silvery and shimmering, making the cars and barriers waver like a mirage, and it gave off a liquidy sound like a stench, which is always an interesting thing to explain, a sound like a smell. Susanna put her hands to her ears and says that she is not sure if she can stand it. She already feels like vomiting, and she has not eaten all day. Eddie felt the same way, but could not take his eyes off the thinny. It was like unreality had been given not a face, but a vast shimmering body, or a presence. Its presence was like that of the demon when they were drawing Jake. Roland was digging through his bag and came out with a fistful of bullets. He took Susanna's hand and put 2 bullets into her hand. He then took 2 bullets and put them slug end first into his ears. Susanna was doubtful, but she did it and immediately had the look of relief on her face. Eddie began to get some bullets from Jake's gun, and Roland shook his head and reached out and held out 4 more bullets, 2 for him and 2 for Jake. Eddie asked what's wrong with Jake's bullets. Roland said that they are from our world, and would not block the noise. He does not know how he knows this, but he does. Eddie said that those are from our world as well, and Roland says that they are not those. These are not those, and these came from Gilead. Eddie is shocked and asked if they were the Wets. Roland nodded. Eddie said, Roland nodded. Eddie said, but Roland said that they would never fire. He's basically talking back to him. It's like, hey, you said they would never fire. And Roland nodded again. Eddie asks then why save them, and Roland reminded him to waste nothing. Jake puts his in. Eddie first tried some from our world. They did virtually nothing to stop the sound. He tried Roland's bullets, and the sound was gone, almost entirely gone, if not very minimal. He expected when he spoke it'd be like having earplugs in, but he actually could hear himself pretty well. Eddie asked if there's anything that Roland doesn't know, and Roland says quite a lot. Jake asks about Oi, and Roland says that he will be fine, and they need to make some miles before dark. So,
Yeah.
that's quite an interesting turn of events here.
Mm-hmm.
So the thinny is something I can't wait to see on screen. Honestly, I mostly picture just like almost like a cloud of mirage.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain what I picture, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I'm fully picturing what King's trying to convey necessarily. So I don't know. What about you? What do you picture?
I hate things like this that seem like a gas, but they should be a liquid. I can't picture anything really like that, so I just get frustrated trying to. So I just use the heat haze, mirage.
Yeah,
Like that's it. Is I just picture that. That's all I can come up with. I every time I try to think more deeply about it, and I think about those things that like it should be a gas, but it's a liquid.
Yeah.
Or it should be a liquid, but it's a gas. Or it should be a liquid, but it's a solid. It's just like,
Yeah.
no, fuck those. I hate those things.
yeah.
Pick one.
So I can't wait to see it on screen
Yeah.
because my brain does not fully have a finger on exactly what it looks like. I'm with Eddie, though. I am very surprised that Roland held on to bullets that he said would never work. I've never seen Roland as a sentimental type, kind of like these are from my home type shit. Like, I actually would say, not only do I not see Roland that way, I would say very definitively he is not that way. Roland is not at all the sentimental type. So I don't know. I guess I just don't view disposing of something that doesn't work as waste. Like if you have a dead battery, throwing it away, is Roland see that as waste? Because these are bullets that will not fire. Like this is as worthless as a dead battery. I mean, it's coming in handy here, but I'm looking at like backaways. Like back in book 2 when he had these wets, or book 2, after he has the wets, he gets the new bullets. Why the hell keep them? This is just a weird thing for me. I don't know. Because I guess I don't see it as waste for something that's I don't know. It's a strange thing for me. I don't fully read it. What about you?
You never know when you might need them. I mean, case in point, right here, they ended up needing them.
Yeah, that's the saying of all hoarders, I think, sir.
I mean, to an extent, you would argue that, but the definition of a hoarder is someone who's clogging up a house, right?
Yeah.
This is someone on the road who's able to carry it. Why would he throw it away? You look at some of those, dude, look back into some of those, like, caravans, like the pioneers coming across America and stuff like that. Man, they kept shit that they're like, this is wood. We might be able to use it. If not, it's still going to make good firewood. There's a use for everything kind of thing. So I could see, dude, it's very Boy Scouty of Roland to be like, nah, I'm not throwing these away. I know they'll never fire again, but I might be able to find a use for them. And here, sure enough, he does.
He does. It just seems like a very a stretch that it would ever become useful.
Hey, it did.
What I find insane here is Roland has not actually had bullets from our world around a thinny before. So how the fuck does he know they won't work? It's not from experience.
Yeah.
And we know that Roland's not necessarily the most imaginative mind. Like, that's been pounded into our heads
He
now.
doesn't think around corners.
So this is a strange thing for him to know. And he says, I don't know how I know it, but I do. So it's not like King's like, I'm not saying this from a realm of like, God damn it, King, he shouldn't know this. It's more of just like, how the fuck does he know?
Yeah.
It's just very, very strange to me. But I do like it, though, that stuff from our world is going to act differently than stuff in his world. I also love Eddie, always the one to doubt Roland has to try the Ruger bullets first.
Yeah. And they don't work.
They don't
of
work.
course, just like Roland said.
Yeah.
I'm curious why the bullets from our world don't work. Like, what's the explanation?
What's different?
What's the science behind it? Kind of thing. Like a little bit of world building here that could have been that wasn't, and so I have to try and fill it in myself. I like that.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because again, it's not like Roland's a dude that's come in and out of our world all the time and has often experienced ammo from our world. Like, no, I think that in that third door is the first time he's probably, I mean, he had to struggle to figure out which bullets were his, even from the shooter's Bible. So,
the way he reacted with all the paper being wasted.
Yeah.
Someone ripped off a page of a notebook and just tossed it into the garbage. He's just like, you thought someone had like pooped on his ancestral tree or something. Like, holy cow.
You know what I want to see, though, is like do some kind of like sci-fi thing, but do something that would have us all react that way. Like find something that we value that some other culture is just completely like reverse it. Put the audience in Roland's place.
Good politicians. That's the that's what it is right there. That's what you get.
Or if it's like gold is just worthless to this race, and they just use it for like paperweights and stuff, and kids are throwing them.
Is that gold? And they're like, yeah. Do you know how much that's worth? I bought it for 60 cents.
Yeah. And it's because I felt bad for the kid I was buying it from.
Yeah,
it
was a kid doing a fundraiser for school. He was knocking on doors selling paperweights.
Selling garbage, yeah. Oh, man.
So we're on subchapter 7 now, right?
Yep.
All right. So Oi doesn't seem bothered by the warble or the thinny, but he still sticks close to Jake all afternoon. He kept looking mistrustfully at all the stalled cars that clogged the eastbound lanes of I-70. Susanna saw that the cars didn't clog the highway completely. The congestion eased as they left downtown behind them. But even where the traffic was heavy, a number of vehicles had been pushed to one side or the other. Susanna thinks that someone had been to work with a wrecker, and the idea makes her happy as she doesn't think anyone would bother to do that in the middle of the plague, but after, which means the plague didn't get everyone.
Yeah, I have to pause real quick because I do have one thing I didn't get a note for.
Yeah.
Oi looking mistrustfully at the cars. Is that maybe a reaction to Blaine?
That, or also it's just something big and large. I've seen dogs react that way.
Yeah.
You don't know what that is. What is that? Oh, God. It's a shit.
We just haven't seen him react to a lot of different things in this way. So I'm just wondering, after Blaine, he's so like on edge where it's just like, hey, I just trusted y'all and we ended up on that fucking train. Now he's just like, I'm watching all you fuckers.
It could be.
Cars aren't far from trains, especially to an animal. Like that wouldn't look that much different.
I think it's just more like dial it back a notch where take the intelligence out of it. It's just, is that a predator? Is that a predator? Is that a predator? You know, kind of thing. I mean, things probably ate Billy Bumblers, so they probably have that prey mentality a little bit.
I should pull that picture up while you talk about eating Billy Bumblers.
I didn't say anything about eating Billy Bumblers. I said they were prey and that something ate them, not me eating them.
No, I know. I'm just saying, as you're talking about something eating Billy Bumblers, we should have that picture on the screen. Is all I'm saying.
Something as monstrous as that, and you know who wants to eat Billy Bumblers? Flag. He would enjoy a Billy Bumblers burger. That's for sure. But Susanna's thought here, like the logic of it with like the wrecker and when it would have occurred during the plague and everything like that feels very much like an Eddie thought to me. The optimistic logic behind it just seems like something we've seen from Eddie before, versus like a Susanna who sees kind of like the way things worked and stuff like that in Lud.
Yeah.
Seems like this is a little bit of a dynamic shift from book 3, is where Eddie's the hopeful, optimistic, oh, look, cars have been pushed aside. Someone lived through the plague. That's kind of like an Eddie thing to me.
Yeah, and to me, I'm the opposite. I think that this is actually very much Susanna, because I think she's one that's always been very cunning and keen-eyed. I think Eddie is more an emotional. He's like wants to be hopeful, and then he looks for evidence after the fact, where it's like kind of like Lud, right? Like he has this idea in his head of the helpful elves, so that every little thing he's now trying to pick up as much evidence as he can to support what he already wants to believe. Whereas Susanna, I think, is the one that would like see stuff and then make, you know what I mean? I guess for Eddie, he's like, I want to believe this. Oh, look, here's some evidence that goes along with that. So I love this. Whereas Susanna's one like, oh, that rock's kind of weird. That might mean someone's fault. Like, I guess that's how I view it, is she's more, I guess it's kind of that natural gunslinger that we've seen at the beginning of book 3, where she was taken to things way quicker and easier than Eddie was. I think Eddie's struggles a little bit more with it.
But we never got a sense of that with her with Lud. It always was like, oh, I could see this road and how it worked and the turn signal and stuff like that. We always got that idea from her. We never got the like the cool calculating, oh, this is what's happened since then, and because of this evidence, this is the conclusion I can draw. But we never really saw that.
But she's caught on to things, though. Like when people have called stuff out where Roland has like left things between the lines, she's 9 out of 10 times she's the one that picks up on what it is and goes, oh, you killed some, or you know, I don't know. I mean, it's happened within the last probably 6 months of these shows where, you know, Roland leaves something between the lines and she's the one that catches it and calls him out. Right? Do you mean that you did this? You know, like, so I think she's good at. I think she's got the Holmes hat and pipe, a little bit more. Whereas Eddie, like, I think for Eddie, where I agree with you is I think for him it's the emotional thing. Like, he would want to see that there's survivors.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. This is more like an Eddie thought with the logic tied to it. If it's a Susanna thought, the logic would be there's possibly survivors, but the whole making her happy and everything like that, which means the plague didn't get everyone. That's what I'm saying.
Eddie's rubbing off on her.
It very well could be that. It seems very much like it. That's what I'm saying. That seems like an Eddie thought is that it's, oh, good, there's people alive. Whereas maybe what I would expect more from Susanna, if it is a Susanna thought to me, is that there's people alive. We need to be on our guard. That's a gunslinger Susanna thought to me. But the fact that she's like happy that someone survived.
Do you think she's less guarded because it's our world, quote unquote? I mean,
I don't know.
Obviously, we have different cars and baseball teams, but like, this is our world. This is Topeka.
It's like one step over kind of thing.
Exactly. So I wonder if she's a little bit less on guard because it's like, oh, if there's people like they'd be my kind of people. They wouldn't
not Lud.
They wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't be back shooting, creepy, evil people that want to throw everyone off cliffs and stuff.
Someone who comes up in the middle of the night and slits your throat and takes everything that you have.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess just to put a cap on what I guess I'm saying is I think with Susanna, she would see evidence and then find something from it. I think Eddie, he comes to the conclusion he wants, and then he'll try to find evidence later. It's just a flip-flopping, I think, and because Eddie's like the optimist.
You make a determination, and then you find evidence to support your hypothesis. Whereas she's a little bit more scientific, has not even hypothesis. She looks at the evidence and then forms in a hypothesis.
Exactly. So, but I do think that Eddie might be rubbing off on her because you are right. There's some emotion there that we haven't necessarily seen from her, like a joy and happiness. So I would attribute that to the fact that they're rubbing off on each other. Or he's rubbing off on her because so far, I mean, Susanna has a gamut of emotions certainly. But that does, I agree with the emotion part of that it feels like Eddie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
for
like
sure.
The logic leading to emotion. That's an Eddie kind of thing for me. It's like, look, big city, help.
Yeah, but
that's my thought. That's why I'm saying Eddie it's not big city. I wonder what's going to happen. That's a Susanna thought.
But
it's Wrecker. People did this after the plague. That makes me happy.
But where it's Susanna, she doesn't say a word about it. Eddie, of course, would have been like, hey,
there's people
alive.
Yeah.
Like, Susanna just keeps it to herself and just like smiles internally. Eddie, I don't know if he has an internal monologue. He's like that Austin Powers scene where it's like he just says everything.
Did I say that out loud? There's some talk in the chat. They also seem to gain a sharper sense of perception just in being around Roland, survival, and behavior, Alan says.
Yeah.
Baraki says, and he also got a lot sharper as his drug issues faded out. That is true.
Yeah, for sure.
He absolutely does. He's not just a bumbling fool.
Oh no, and I don't mean to make it seem like that. I'm just saying that I don't think he's as observant because I think, like I said, I think it comes down to that first like 20-30 pages where it talks up how Susanna is so of book 3, how Susanna is so naturally taken to the gunslinger stuff where Eddie has to work harder at it. I think that's all I'm getting at. Not to say that Eddie's like this buffoon that's going to overlook things. It's just that I think he maybe has to work harder at catching things, whereas Susanna, she's a hawk. She's catching all kinds of stuff.
I don't know. Eddie caught a couple things that Roland laid out there and called him on it too. So that's what I think what Baraki's getting at is in book 3. It's not just Susanna like what you're saying. Eddie is also right there with her with catching things.
Yeah, I think usually Eddie, it's more of like he catches Roland in like lies or
slip ups,
kind of like the brotherly, sibling rivalry type thing. Whereas Susanna, I think she'll catch on things where it's just like not necessarily in a confrontational way, but it's like, wait a minute, you're leaving something out here. I wish I had an example fresh in my head, but it's not coming to me.
Yeah.
But no, for sure. And again, I'm not saying it to downplay Eddie. I'm just saying that, and it is Detta, right? Like that's one of the elements that she got from Detta. Detta we picked up from book 2 is keen as a snake. Like she is cunning as all hell, sharp as all hell. There's nothing that was like, God, there was something I just watched recently, and someone sees something very subtle, and you could just, the way the camera plays it, you understand that person's so sharp, they're not going to get anything let by them. And it was something so small, but it was it turned out massive for them. And I think that's the way Detta was, and I think that's, Susanna gets that from her because, Detta's very, very keen.
Baraki says they all affect each other in good ways. That's how the Tet works. It's very true.
For sure.
Yeah, each one of them brings something to the Tet, and it bleeds into the others, and so they form a cohesive unit.
Yeah, because I would say, like with Eddie, it's for him. I think his biggest thing he contributes is like the moral compass.
Yeah,
I think he's like, which is weird because you almost think Jake might be because the kids kind of have that.
That's wrong.
Yeah, that element of morality. But I feel like Eddie, in that way, is still a child. Like, how often has he just been absolutely like ready to punch Roland because like, no, we're not letting this happen type thing. Like, he's got that ingrained, almost like childlike good and evil.
At the same time, he's also the one that talks to Jake about why they can't stay at river crossing.
Yeah,
I feel like he's got this logic to him.
Yeah,
that as long as you can tap into his logic sense is on point.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of getting past his emotions to getting to that logic first.
Yeah. And I remember he was one of the biggest ones to jump on Blaine about killing Ludd. Like, he was one of the most outraged about it. Like he was the most vocal about, shit talking Blaine about what the fuck when he's gassing the whole town. So, but yeah, no, for sure. It's a fun little tangent, but yeah, I think they all definitely bring stuff to each other, and ultimately they're all under Roland's teaching. So I think they're all going to have to learn, sharpness as much as possible too, because he's going to be teaching them that as gunslingers. Like, you guys need to know how to do some of these things. You need to know how to catch things. Like, you can't all just rely on me constantly. I'm sure we haven't really seen that conveyed, but I'm sure that's part of the teaching that we're not necessarily seeing. The stuff that's between the pages is going to be him teaching them.
Absolutely. So going on here, they're walking down the interstate, and there's corpses in the cars. Like at the station, they were mummified and not runny. The majority of the cars were empty, however. A lot of the drivers and passengers that were caught in the traffic jams had seemingly tried to walk out of the plague zone. But Susanna thinks there was another reason besides traffic that the cars are empty. Susanna knew that if it was her and her end was near with, the Captain Trips, she would have had to be chained to a steering wheel to die inside of a car. She would want to be open in God's open air. A hill would be the best, someplace with a little elevation, but even a wheat field would do if it came to that. Anything but coughing your last while smelling the air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror. See, that's a Susanna thought.
That's a sharp image there.
It is.
Because we've all smelt those horrible fucking trees and like this, how overpowering they are. Can you? Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, it's also like we see it in the stand. I know we keep calling back to the stand, but obviously
we're in the stand right now.
We're in the stand right now. There's one where
it's the smell of Campion's car.
No, it's
when they open the car and they all almost start to retch because like there's two decomposing people. Two of them have shit themselves. Like can you imagine what that smell would be like in these cars?
Yeah. What I was actually going to say is what I'm talking about is in the Lincoln Tunnel right before they go into the Lincoln Tunnel. Larry's by himself because he sent Rita off. He sees a car accident where someone had coughed onto the window and then laid their head into it and died.
Yeah.
And that's what Susanna's talking about here is that horrible sense of, dude, the car is one of the last places on earth that I want to die. Like, it is not especially, it's not an instant death. This isn't, like a gunshot to the head or something like that, or you're, snap the fingers and you're gone.
Yeah.
This is a prolonged, I'm going to sit here, suffer, and die.
Yeah.
That's terrible. That's what my note here is that
in
that's
a car in the summer too.
In the summer, in the dead heat of summer. That's hot enough as it is. I mean, I know what it's going to be like. It's like we already talked about. It's September. It's starting to cool off here a little bit in Utah. Still, when I go out and get in my car, it's going to be fucking hot because it sits out there in the sun.
Yeah. During
the couple hours that we're here recording and everything like that, I would not want to be stuck inside of that dying for my last 30 minutes.
No. God,
no. I'd crawl my ass out and die laying on the road.
Yeah.
Versus that.
Yeah.
And that's why my notes here is that seems like a Susanna thought to me more than what we had in the last little bit. And also, I couldn't agree more with her.
Yeah. Then my note, I've never understood the idea of having to flee from a disease. You're only going to expose yourself to more people. In the stand, I would be one of the ones that they have to remove from my house later on down the road.
Yeah.
I would not be going out of town. There's just no logic in that for me.
It's
like you're not going to escape. It's not like a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
You're trying to escape like the fallout. No, it's a fucking disease. Like, I'm safer here in my house than I'm going to be getting in my car and trying to drive out of this valley. Like, I'm going to expose myself to how many more people doing that
going
than
to get
just staying
gas,
here.
to get supplies.
Yeah, like fuck
and
that, dude.
Getting stuck in traffic and,
No-
and everything. You
no
also
logic
expose
to it.
yourself because your house is a little bit more formidable to defend
Yeah.
versus a vehicle that's made out of large part glass. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people could break that. They can get in there that way.
Yeah,
and
to hell with
everything.
I've thought that every time I read The Stand too. I have no idea what the logic of these people are.
I don't know.
Like it's not like there's some disease-free zone that you're going to drive to. Like
I guess the
it's-
idea is like they think plague, they think zombie apocalypse, they think, nuclear blast, they think something like that. The best thing to do is to get away from people. Well, the only way to do that is to get on the road where there is lots of people.
Nah, for me, that's more of a pre-thought. If you want to be away from people because maybe zombies or Captain Trips is going to happen, you need to move to that now and live in some rural area.
A town of 500 people.
Exactly.
You
You,
know?
got to make your choice first. Once the disease actually starts, it's too fucking late
Yeah,
now.
you can't. You have to work with what you have, not try to get something that you don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
yeah.
So going on, at one time, Susanna guessed they would have been able to see many of the corpses of the fleeing infected, but they can't now because of the thinny. They approached it steadily, and she knew the moment they entered it. A kind of tingling shudder ran through her body, making her draw up her shortened legs, and the wheelchair stopped moving. She turned and saw the boys holding their stomachs and grimacing like they had all been stricken with a bellyache at the same time. Eddie and Roland straightened up after a minute, and Jake bent to stroke Oi, who was watching him anxiously. "You boys all right?" Susanna asked. The question came out in a half-querulous, half-humorous voice of Detta Walker. Using the voice was nothing she planned. Sometimes it just came out. Jake says, "Yeah, but it feels like he has a bubble in his throat." Okay, I typed that doing my prep, but reading that makes me just be like, bleh, in my throat. That's, He stares uneasily at the thinning. The silvery blackness was all around them now, as if the world had turned into a flat Norfolk fen at dawn. Nearby trees poked out of the silvery surface and cast distorted reflections that never stayed quite still or quite in focus. A little further away, Susanna could see a giant storage seeming to float in the thinny. Sorry, I missed a word. Grain storage. Yeah.
Which those are creepy too.
Yeah, they are. And deadly, apparently.
Grain silos. Oh,
Have you heard about how deadly they are?
yeah, absolutely.
Dude, that's terrifying.
yeah, because it was a Quiet Place where someone falls into one.
Is there? I don't.
Isn't
remember
it
that.
Quiet Place?
Is it Quiet Place too? I didn't see that.
No, I think it was I thought it was the first one.
I don't remember
but-
it. I don't remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
My note here is this reminds me of the Great Salt Lake or the Salt Flats here in Utah. The drive specifically from Salt Lake City to Wendover has stretches where there's divided freeway and there's water in between and on both sides when the lake is high.
When the lake flooded in the 80s.
When the lake flooded. I actually went to Google Maps and considered getting a picture and having it up here. Back in 2019, they had a stretch. It's right after we hit Grantsville, right before we hit that mountain that you turn off and go to Skull Valley. There is stretches there that remind me of this, where there's water on one side that goes on the north side, that's Great Salt Lake, and on the south side there's a stretch of 3 or 4 miles that can fill up and be like what they're describing, like swampland. But then also when we drove out, we went out to Wendover, 2 months ago?
Something like
or
that.
so. The Bonneville Salt Flats are flooded right now because we had such a wet winter.
Yeah.
Just water for miles.
Yeah.
It may be only like 2 or 3 inches deep, but it's just water for miles. And and like the reflecting description here of the trees, there's old telephone poles
Yeah.
that were used during the 80s, and then we had the really bad flood in like 1980 or
83.
1983.
Yeah.
1983 was a really bad flood. It flooded all of I-80, like feet underwater.
Yeah.
Was the freeway.
Yeah. My grandpa was driving truck at the time.
Yeah.
You actually could not drive through I-80. He was in Nevada doing a long haul thing. He had to drive up through Idaho to get back home down here to Salt Lake.
Which means going around the Great Salt Lake. And if people have never looked at the Great Salt Lake, just pull up Google Maps and look at Utah and see how massive the Great Salt Lake actually is. It's a pretty big lake.
Yeah.
And so he had to drive all the way around that. They left the telephone poles. They redid the poles and moved them away from the road just in case if this ever happened again. But they left the telephone poles. So if in wet years like right now, you can actually see a telephone pole which looks a lot like this, standing in water, and on a windy day it's all distorted and the reflection's not true because it's also salt water. It's not like that crystal clear, fresh water. image.
Yeah.
So that's what this is drawing up to my mind.
Yeah, Baraki says, imagine how horrible, or how horrible to die, knowing that most of humanity will also be dying in the same way, and then if anyone survived, that the world they lived in would be hellish.
Oof, that's terrifying.
I mean, there is some people that probably be like, well, if I'm going to go, the rest of the world should too. I don't know what you're talking about. And then Baraki also says, the horror of the death of civilization, the world moving on, indeed. So the effect it has on them all is pretty interesting. Just, like bubbly insides and grabbing guts and stuff. Ultimately, I picture it as a mirage wavy cloud. And honestly, I can't picture much else because there's really nothing like this in reality. What King is explaining here is something that's totally alien to anything we've ever seen in our real world. So there's no like easy thing to point to and go, oh, it's kind of like this. It's just not. I don't know. It's nuts.
The only thing I can ever think of is it's what is it? Liquid mercury. You ever seen liquid mercury and how it reacts when it's like laid on like certain metals? It like jumps and moves on its own and everything. Yeah. But it's like silvery and like reflective. It creeps me out. It's like, no, that's not supposed to react that way. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So going on here, Eddie says it feels like he has a bubble in his mind. Susanna asks if he can still hear it, and he says yes, but faint, and he can live with it. And then he asks if she can, and she says yes, and let's go. Susanna decided it was like riding in an open cockpit plane through broken clouds. They would go for what felt like miles through murmuring brightness, and that was not quite fog and not quite water. They would occasionally see shapes, a barn, a tractor, a Stuckey's billboard looming out of it, then lose sight of everything but the road, which ran consistently above the thinny's bright but somehow indistinct surface. Then all at once they would hit a clearing, and the humming sound would fall away to a faint drone. They could even unplug their ears and not be too bothered until you go to the other side of the brink.
Yeah.
My note here is, man, with how dangerous Roland was saying that this thinny would be, it would take me some convincing to head into a thinny that came right up to the edge of the road.
Oh, yeah. My note is there would have to be a decent discussion. Get me with 100 fucking yards of that thing.
I get very much like the Blob vibes and everything like
or
that.
The Mist.
Or like the Mist. Like, I ain't walking into that.
Yeah, no.
No, the road's fine. It's why I'm like, yeah, you're going to tell me that 100 miles.
On both sides of
100 miles down the road or 10 miles into this, that it's not just going to go.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly.
Like, what's it waiting for?
If it was open on one side, I'd probably be more prone to it, but I'd probably be on the other side of the road. I wouldn't be on the road. But to have it on both sides, no way. Sorry.
That's like saying, hey, you want to walk down this lane through the swamp? There's gators and everything like that on both sides with the water right up to this thing. Yeah, it can leave the water and get me. No, thank you.
No thanks.
There were vistas. Well, no, that's not. That was too grand for Kansas. Doesn't exactly have vistas, and this is very true. We've both been to the Midwest. I haven't been to Kansas. I've been to Nebraska.
Yeah.
Very flat.
Yeah.
Very, very flat. But
disorienting for me.
It is, because we grew up in Utah with mountains on either side.
Mountains are how I gauge north and south, so knowing which mountains are on which side. So to go to a place like Nebraska, I was like disoriented.
The big ones are on the east, and the little ones are on the west.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you know.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Which means that way's north and that way's south.
Yeah, it's easy.
That's how you do it.
It's easy, yeah. But
when you go to Nebraska, all of a sudden you're like,
I don't know which way.
Where's my mountains? But every now and then they would come to an open field and the occasional group of autumn bright trees marking a spring or cow pond. No Grand Canyon or surf crashing on Portland headlight, but you could at least see the by God horizon off in the distance. You would lose some of that unpleasant feeling of entombment, then right back into the goop you went. I don't like goop. I don't like that.
It's a fun word.
Again, getting very blobby vibes here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jake came closest to describing it, Susanna thought. He said that being in the thinny was like finally reaching the shining water mirage you could often see far up the highway on hot days. Like we were talking about earlier, mirage-looking stuff.
Yeah.
However you described it, being inside it was claustrophobic, purgatorial, all the world gone except for the twin barrels of the turnpike and the hulks of the cars like derelict ships abandoned on a frozen ocean. Susanna says a quick prayer to a god she doesn't precisely believe in, but she still believed in something. But since waking on the beach of the Western Sea in Roland's world, her concept of the invisible world had changed considerably. She prayed, please help us get out of this and help us find the beam again. Please help us escape this world of silence and death.
Yeah. Also, that's a good reminder I didn't grab a note on, but yeah, they haven't found the beam yet, so that's an interesting thing, and that's got to be disorienting for them because they've been following it for so long now.
For a book now.
Yeah.
And everything. I just put this sounds very unsettling. We already kind of talked about how neither one of us would be willing to walk down there.
No.
So
no, thank you.
Yeah.
My note. Yeah, claustrophobic would get me. I'm not a claustrophobic person, but sometimes it bothers me. And this feels like a time that it definitely would. Like I'm not. I don't know. Some people are like, oh my god, I can't get an MRI and all this stuff. Like none of that. Like, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. But every once in a great while, some element of claustrophobia will hit me, and this feels like, again, like I'd have no out. With it on both sides of the road, I have no way out.
Yeah, that's not a fun place to be. It's also like one of those ones where it's like, it's not claustrophobia, but I'm not one of those people that wants to go stand on an island in the middle of a raging river.
Yeah.
Where there's like a flash flood going on and the water's slowly rising. I get that feeling here with this.
Yeah.
So, I love the phrase that Susanna uses here, the invisible world, when talking about gods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's an interesting choice of words there to describe that for us.
Yeah.
So going on, they ran into the biggest clear space yet. The road sign said Big Springs, 2 miles. Behind them in the west, the sun shone through a brief rift in the clouds, skipping scarlet splinters across the top of the thinny and lighting the windows and taillights of the stalled cars in tones of fire. On both sides, empty fields stretched away, full earth come and gone, Susanna thought. Reaping come and gone, too. This is what Roland calls closing the year. The thought made her shiver. Susanna's just creeping herself out quite a bit in this section. Keeps thinking about just weird things.
She's good at that across the whole thing.
She is.
I mean, she's done that a number of times now. Also in the chat, Baraki says, did 9 months in western Kansas. You learned to orient by the sun, but it is disorienting for a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I guess I wasn't there long enough to really get used to the idea. It was just,
I was there for 2 days.
Yeah, it wasn't long. So, yeah, very, very strange.
I just remember walking out, because it was a family vacation. We were driving back from South Dakota where we had seen Mount Rushmore. We stopped in Nebraska, and that morning my dad and I were loading up the car to put bags in, pillows and stuff like that. We were moving on to the next hotel. And he goes, do you know which way is north? And I just it's that way. And he goes, nope. That's east. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah. Like, did you even think about it, or did you just instinctively respond? And I'm like, no, it's just like, that's the way I thought was north. That's the way we came. And he's like, going over it with me, and he's like, you're thrown off because on that side is the hotel, and on that side is another hotel, and so that represented the mountains for you.
Yeah.
Like, I took the 2 biggest things around me, which were hotels.
Yeah.
And these were not hotels, you know, like 15-story tall hotels. They were like 3 stories. Like, they had 3 floors. That's it. Yeah. And I took that as my mountains.
Yeah.
And everything.
Well, the other thing, too, is Utah, at least in Salt Lake, almost every road, I'd say 99% of the roads, either run east, west, or north, south.
Yeah.
And in other places, that isn't always the case. Sometimes you have some of these weird diagonal roads and stuff. So it's like, if nothing else, I could look at an intersection and go, okay, well, there's north, south, east, and west. I just don't know which way is which.
Yeah.
That's my general assumption, but in other states, it's not always like that. So those things could throw me off, too.
Yeah, Utah's very smart with their grid system. If you ever have studied roads and different towns, I've heard podcasters talking about they go to different conventions, and they've come to the Fan X experience here in Salt Lake that used to be called the Salt Lake Comic-Con. And they talk about the Utah road system and how unique it is versus every other part of the country where it is very grid-like, where it's
yeah, let's just not talk about what zero is.
Yeah, we won't mention that.
Then my note, I mean, the flu world is creepy enough without all the addition of this otherworldly thinny.
Yeah.
Adds to the unsettling nature of everything going on.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's bad enough in the stand when we're talking about it with all the different things that are creepy about the world.
Let's just look for a little grocery store and see if a Mrs. Carmody is there for us.
No. Or an abandoned playground. Nope. No, thank you. So Roland says that they're going to camp here for the night. Remember, they're in a clearing away from the thinny and everything like that. Up ahead, they could see the thinny close back around the highway, but that was miles further on. And you can see a damn long way in Kansas, Susanna was discovering. Roland says that they can get firewood without going too near the thinny, and the sound might not be too bad, and they might be able to sleep even without bullets in their ears. My note here is they're camping in the middle of it. I know it isn't right at the edge of the road at this moment, but I still wouldn't want to sleep. I'd be worried about it creeping closer in the night.
Yeah.
It's like I've talked about. It's like, I'm not going to go to sleep like, oh, I got miles on both sides sleep, and you wake up and it's...
Well, here's the other thing, too. They've been walking a while now. Mm-hmm. There comes a point, what if it just started moving a centimeter every minute in? Because you're so far from the other end.
Are you going to turn back, or are you going to keep going?
Exactly. My note, I would be asking if there was anything that lived in the thinny. Beasts, perhaps?
No, yeah. See, we haven't even talked about that. What if there's something under there?
Maybe, again, the mist is affecting me a little bit. But, yeah, a lot of hungry monsters.
No, thank you. So going on, Eddie and Jake climb over the guardrails to gather wood, staying together like Roland admonished them to do. When they got back to the clouds had gulped the sun up, and an ashy, uninterested twilight had begun to creep over the world. As Roland made the fire, Eddie strolled across the median strip and stood there to the median strip and stood there, hands in his pockets, looking east. After a few minutes, Jake and Oi joined him. Roland took out his flint and steel and scraped fire into the chimney he had built, and soon the little campfire was burning. Eddie called Roland and Suze to come over and look at something. Susanna started to roll herself, and Roland, after a quick last check on his fire, starts pushing her over. Susanna asks what they're supposed to be looking at. Eddie points down the road. At first, Susanna doesn't see anything, although the turnpike was perfectly visible beyond the point where the thinning closed in again, perhaps 3 miles ahead. Then, yes, she says, she might see something. Kind of shape, but if not for the fading daylight. Jake asks if it's a building built right across the highway. Eddie asks Roland if he sees it, as he has the best eyes in the universe. Roland doesn't say anything for a time, only looking up the median strip with his thumbs hooked in his gun belt. At last, he says, "We'll see it better when we get closer." And then here's a quote directly from the book to finish off the subchapter. "Oh, come on," Eddie said. "I mean, holy shit, do you know what it is or not?" "We'll see it better when we get closer," the gunslinger repeated, which was, of course, no answer at all. He moseyed back to across the eastbound lanes to check on his campfire, boot heels clicking on the pavement. Susanna looked at Jake and Eddie. She shrugged, they shrugged back, and then Jake burst into bright peals of laughter. Usually, Susanna thought the kid acted more like an 18-year-old than a boy of 11, but that laughter made him sound about 9 going on 10. And she didn't mind a bit. She looked down at Oi, who was looking at them earnestly while rolling his shoulders in an effort to shrug. What a cute little bumbler.
I have to point out boot heels clicking on the pavement. I like that. I do like that. That's a happy memory.
No.
Especially in the light of the super flu.
So my note here is just typical Roland. He could say yes or no if he sees something, instead of just leaving it as a question, just like leaving it up in the air and everything. Then he excuses himself and just off he goes, you know?
Yeah. So to me, this is very echoey of when Roland has a total disinterest in something that the rest of them are super interested in. But this isn't necessarily disinterest. Like when they were, what was it? They were poking around something after Blaine. They wanted to look at a building or something. He's just like, why? It's not part of our journey.
Eddie asked if they should go inside where the mummified corpses were. And he's like, why? There's nothing but death in there.
Yeah, and there's just those times that Roland's very nonchalant. This kind of feels like that, but it's not that he's entirely disinterested. So it's just a very interesting. It's an echo of what we've seen before, but not the exact kind of way. He's a little bit more cagey, more than disinterested.
Well, we also know that there's a lot weighing on his mind recently. So
yeah, that's true too. But very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Oi trying to shrug is something I always forget about. It's got to be one of his cutest moments. Like I just trying to roll his shoulders and everything.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so moving on to subchapter 8. They ate gunslinger burritos around the fire. They were not talking much, and it dawned on Eddie that they rarely did this time of the day, as if the Earth trading day for night was a special time that closed them off from the power of the Ka-Tet. Jake fed Oi scraps, and Roland and Eddie were looking up at the stars, and Eddie noticed the Old Star and Old Mother were gone. Instead, he saw Polaris and the Big Dipper, and Eddie thought that it may not be his world with some strange cars, sports teams, and fast food joints, but it was too close for comfort, and perhaps it was the world next door. Yeah. So, what do you got here?
I get the being too tired to talk. I've done campouts where we've gone hiking or rock climbing or whitewater rafting and stuff like that. That night's dinner is always a bit quieter affair than if we had just, gotten there and got out of the cars and set up camp. That's usually a pretty raucous time. But when you're tired, it's usually a pretty quiet time after you eat. You get all the comfy, feeling.
Baraki says Roland's seen a lot of death. He doesn't like to dwell on it. He is practical and also protective of Jake. So yeah, I mean that could be part of it too. So maybe he's trying to protect himself as well as Jake from some of the stuff that they've tried to poke around in previously.
Yeah.
But I don't know, him being cagey about what's being seen ahead, because we all know he could see it, right?
Absolutely.
We all know what his eyes are. I will say though, it's very interesting to flip flop it going back to your subchapter, because prior we saw that Susanna had better eyes than Eddie. So for Eddie to pick it out here is an interesting thing. Because I can't remember when it was. Was it early book 3? There was something when they were trying to see something in the distance. Roland could see something. Susanna then saw it next, and then Eddie was the last to see it. So it was early book 3 because Jake wasn't even there yet.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting now that it's flipped a little bit because now Eddie's the first one.
You're not thinking of the beam, are you?
No, because it was something in the distance. Because they were walking, and it was just like, "Do you see it yet?" And like there was like a conversation about it. And then Susanna was the first to, "I see something," and then Eddie was the last to get. So it's just an interesting flip flop that Eddie's eyes are sharpening. I find it funny that it took Eddie until now to notice this seemingly daily silence as day turned to night. As a guy who is likely driven mad by silence, you think that he would have noticed that sooner. Even not even that he would want to disrupt it, but just to notice that, like, hey, we're all quiet. Yeah. Like, it feels like he's kind of one of those guys. Some people, like, silence is like noises for most of us. Like, noise can drive us crazy, and silence is that way for some people. And those are usually those boisterous life of the party people.
Hi. How's it going?
So,
it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
And then my next note, I guess over the years, debating on if Roland's world was just Mad Max post-apocalyptic version of our own. I suppose this proves that they are not. Stars are a dead giveaway that the similarities between Roland's world and ours is something strange. And his world is not just some far-flung future version of our own. All the years, dude, I've looked for all these different like clues and hints of like, is this our world? Is it not? I bounced back and forth multiple times. Somehow I've always missed locking onto this. The stars are completely different. Like, and we know the movie did that. The movie, we actually saw some like planetary bodies in the sky. So they did a good job of like, this is a different fucking world.
Yeah.
But this has been here all along, and I've never
right in front of us.
I've never grabbed this to say like, oh yeah, completely different stars.
Yep.
Let's see. So then Eddie brought up Roland's backstory again. Roland looked into the sky for a long pause and then asked for one more day to think things over, or maybe it was one more night to dream on them. He says that they are old things, dead things, but some things do not rest easily when they are dead. Their bones cry out from the ground. Jake says that there are ghosts, and Eddie sees a shadow of the horror in Jake's eyes that must have been there when he was in Dutch Hill. Jake said something, sometimes there are ghosts, and sometimes they come back. Roland agreed. Susanna suggested that it might be better just to rip off the Band-Aid. Roland looked at her and told her tomorrow night's fire he would tell them, and he promised in his father's name. Eddie shocks himself by asking if they really needed to hear it. He wanted to know as much as anyone, but he says that if it really hurts, maybe, and he trails off. Roland said that he is not sure if they need to hear it, but he needs to tell it. And the tower is in front of them, and he needs to put his past to rest. He then says that he cannot tell them all of it because in his world, even the past is in motion, rearranging itself in many ways, but the story will stand for all the rest. Jake asks if it is a Western, and Roland does not know what he means, but Gilead and Magus are both baronies of the Western world. Eddie interrupts and says that it'll be a Western. All of Roland's stories are Westerns. They hear the thinny in the distance, and Eddie touches the bullets in his pocket and is satisfied that they are still there. I think we all do that, right? Touch something to make sure you got something that's important.
When I'm walking into a store, I usually check my back pocket
for the wallet.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse to going into a store than when you get to that at the end, you've shopped all couple hours maybe, and you go up to the register and you realize you don't have your wallet, dude.
A couple weekends ago, me and my daughter were going to Costco. We got all the way to the front door, and you have to show your card to get in. Reached back for my wallet, and it wasn't there. I didn't do my wallet tap before leaving the house.
Yeah.
So disappointed
And
in
they
myself.
actually say that's the reason they do it, because they want to stop people from going shopping the entire time. It's not even that they're like, hey, you have to have a membership to come in, but it's more like, because I asked one time, it's like, what do you guys ask for? Like, you know, I won't be able to check out if I'm not a member.
Right.
He's like, yeah, but he's like, what if you came in here and shopped the whole time, you get to the register, you realize you forgot your wallet?
It's more work for them to have to put stuff back or hold it.
He's like, it's inconvenience for all of us. He's like, so we're just checking here to make sure that you have what you need or whatever.
So they stop people like me from coming in.
Yeah, exactly. Susanna kisses him goodnight, and Eddie says that it's not every day that he gets to ride on the world's fastest train, destroy the world's smartest computer, and then discovers the flu has killed everyone, and all before dinner, and says that days like that make a man tired.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Eddie is asking this time. It has been Susanna asking most of the time about the story. Also interesting that Jake has not really ever been the one to ask, which is interesting because, I mean, he's known Roland the longest. There was a dip where he didn't know Roland, and maybe that helps the other two catch up a little bit. But going back, he's the first character that's come across Roland.
Absolutely.
So, it's just interesting that he's not as pushy about wanting this story.
Absolutely. And I love Roland's response to Eddie asking when Eddie asks if they need to hear it, that it might be more about Roland needing to tell it to put his past to rest. It's therapeutic. We've seen it, and we know people who feel better after they get something off of their chest. And I feel like that's where we're at with Roland, is that, it's not the Ka-Tet needs to hear it. It's not something that we as a group need to address and we have something that we're going to have to fight or something like that. It's just simply Roland is, I need to get it off my chest. I need to get this out.
Yeah, for sure. Love seeing the lasting trauma of Dutch Hill. It's so easy for us to forget the larger scale of this story, all the shit that we've been seeing, that this still weighs on these characters. But for Jake, that's still rather fresh and very impactful. So, I don't know. Because honestly, if it hadn't mentioned it, I don't know if I would have thought of Dutch Hill in this context, because it's been a while now.
Yeah.
So, definitely appreciate that. Honestly, Susanna's suggestion of just telling it always strikes me as disingenuous at this point here, because she has been asking and reminding about the story so often that I feel that this is more about her wanting to hear it quicker, more than undercutting Roland's delay tactics, more so than it is about compassion for Roland in a just get through it kind of way. I don't know.
Get it off your chest.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
like I love Susanna, but I don't like this. This doesn't strike me as being helpful.
Yeah.
Just maybe it's just because she's asked so often, or she sees through shit a lot, and maybe she thinks that it's just Roland trying to delay. But I don't know. I just trying to sell medicine as candy is what this feels like.
Oh, gotcha.
And it bothers me a little bit.
Okay.
The Western question is a fish out of water moment for Roland. Those are rare this side of book 2, and I appreciate it. I almost said it's a fish out of water story in Roland's world, but I'm like, wait a minute, we're not in Roland's world. We're back in our world.
Exactly.
Although it's a very strange version of our world.
Or it's our world adjacent, like Eddie just thought.
That's true.
I love Eddie confirming that all of Roland's stories are Westerns.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And then the past rearranging itself? What the fuck?
What does that mean?
What the hell does that
How
mean?
have we never caught on to that before? Just like, wait, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's like his world is a strange, strange place. That's for sure.
Yeah.
In the chat, David said Eddie noticed the beam before Susanna did. Yeah, and I don't think it wasn't the beam for sure that I was trying to remember. It was because it was something in the distance. Because as they were walking, I remember there was like ongoing conversation about, do you see it yet? Or maybe I see something. I remember. Yeah, I just don't remember what it was exactly. But it definitely wasn't the beam. But yeah, Susanna has.
Is it book 2 on the beach with the door?
Maybe it's the third door.
Is it the third door where she's like, there it is, and he's like, what? And she's like, you don't see it? He's like, no. She's like, keep going.
That would probably be it then, yeah, because they would have been discussing, like, do you see it yet type thing.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah. All right, so subchapter 9.
Yeah, in Eddie's, so they go to sleep, and in Eddie's dream, they're all standing on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 46th Street looking over the short board fence and into the weedy vacant lot behind it. They're still in their mid-world clothes, a motley combination of deerskin and old shirts, mostly held together with spit and shoelaces. But no one walking on second seemed to notice. No one also noticed that there's a Billy Bumbler in Jake's arms. Because we are Ghost, Eddie thinks. We are Ghost, and we don't rest easy. On the fence there were handbills, one for the Sex Pistols, a reunion tour, which Eddie found funny as they were a group he knew would never get back together. One for a comic named Adam Sandler that Eddie had never heard of. One for a movie called The Craft about teenage witches. Beyond that one, written in letters all dusky pink of Summer Rose, was this: "See the bear of fearsome size, all the world's within his eyes. Time grows thin, the past's a riddle, the tower awaits you in the middle." Jake points and says, "There's the rose, see how it awaits us." There in the middle of the lot, Susanna says, "It is very beautiful." Then she points to a sign and says, "What's that all about?" According to the sign, two outfits, Mills Construction and Somber Real Estate, were going to combine on what's they called Turtle Bay condominiums on this very lot. When, you ask? Well, very soon, according to the sign. Jake says he wouldn't worry about it as that sign was there before. So pausing right here before we continue this is a pretty short subchapter too. I forgot about the little bear poem. We get one with turtle.
Yeah,
I think.
See the turtle of enormous girth.
Yeah, but this I don't know, remember this bear poem.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler and The Craft are approximately 10 years after Eddie's time. I mean, Adam Sandler's obviously a little bit more variable, but The Craft is, I think it was 96, so it literally is 10 years after Eddie's time. So it's a cool way for King to show us the time period that they are seeing. It is well beyond not only Jake's time that Jake saw the rose in 77, did he see it in his own time, or was he in Eddie's time?
He's in his time. He doesn't go to Eddie's time. Eddie's a kid in Jake's time.
Okay, so 77. So ultimately, you're talking a huge jump in years to the mid 90s to where we're seeing.
Well,
now.
I mean, we're not seeing anything. This is just Eddie's dream.
No, I know, but the fact that they're seeing those posters, I would say he's probably seeing maybe a different time period.
Maybe. I mean, it could be argued that. But
what is this book came out in 97?
Wastelands?
Yeah, 97. So The Craft would have been a couple years old. So
yeah,
it's just funny because the other thing that bothers me though is because for some reason I just stick this in like the 80s. Like when some of the earlier books are coming out, I just stick the whole series there. So every time shit shows up that's later,
hey, wait a minute,
it just feels wrong to me. And then then I always have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, I guess this is written in 97. But for me, it's just this weird thing where when I'm in this story, I think it's just because you gauge your mind in like the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, especially Drawing of the Three, right? Came out in the 80s, and then two of the books came out in the 80s. So I just kind of like Star Wars. Everyone always says, like, oh, the Star Wars, these movies from the 70s. It's like, well, two of the three were in the 80s. So, but you just stick it there. So every time something shows up that's clearly anachronistic for the 80s, it always just throws me for a minute. When we were doing the prep on this, I was like, Adam Sandler at The Craft. Like, no.
That's not the right decade.
This doesn't work.
Yeah.
It should be like Christine, and I guess Eddie Murphy could still count.
Yeah.
Or Eddie Murphy could count. But yeah, I don't know. That's one weird thing about it. Time always fucks with me in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. So at that moment, a revving sound of an engine tore into the air. Chugs of dirty brown exhaust ascend like bad news smoke signals. Suddenly, the boards burst open and a huge red bulldozer lunges through. Even the blade was red, although the words slashed across it. Its scoop, "All Hail the Crimson King," were written in yellow, as bright as panic. Sitting in the peak seat, his rotting face leering at them, was Gasher. On the front of his cocked-back hard hat were the words Lemerck Foundry. Above them, the single eye was painted. Gasher lowered the blade, and it tore across the lot on a diagonal, smashing brick, pulverizing beer and soda bottles, and striking sparks from the rocks. Directly in its path was the rose. And I just went, whoa, like, what, oh no, like, where the hell did this come from? But it is just a dream, right? That's the kind of thing.
Yeah.
And everything.
Well, first of all, before I get to my note, what the fuck is a red tractor look like?
You never seen, like, anything other than yellow?
No.
Oh, I have.
I mean, maybe, like, some that are, like, darker, like, whatever. I've never seen a red one, though.
Oh, really?
That's, like, the one town here that has yellow fire trucks.
Yeah.
It's just
So unnatural.
Yeah. I actually did a ride along with that fire department in high school when I was doing the EMT class. And there was some sort of fire that happened. So another neighboring city was responding to that. So they radioed the one that we were at to help cover. And so we actually had to go on some calls in a city that doesn't have yellow fire trucks. And I just remember like looking out the window and watching people just like gawking because they're just like, what the fuck is this yellow fire truck?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, funny story. But
no, absolutely.
My note, dream to nightmare and Gasher coming back into it. Isn't that awesome?
In Eddie's dream, though, that's interesting. Not Jake's.
Yeah, not Jake. Oh, well, I mean,
I never thought about that.
Gasher does have an impact on everyone there.
I mean, Gasher comes and takes Jake, and Eddie doesn't, and Susanna never see him again. So
no, but they see him at that point. Like it's a pretty terrible moment for all of them.
It's true.
So,
I just would expect it to be Jake's dream if we have Gasher in it.
Yeah, for sure.
So this last part, I'm just going to quote the whole rest of the subchapter. It's really good. So it's Gasher talking. Let's see you ask him some of your silly questions now, this unwelcome apparition cried. Ask all your wants, my dear little culls. Why not? Very fond of riddles is your old pal Gasher. Just so you understand that no matter what you're asked, I'm going to run that nasty thing over. Mash it flat, so I will. Then back over it I'll go. Root and branch, my dear little culls. Root and branch. Susanna shrieked at the scarlet bulldozer blade bore down on the rose, and Eddie grabbed for the fence. He would vault over it, throw himself on the rose, try to protect it. Except it was too late, and he knew it. He looked back up at the cackling thing in the bulldozer's peak seat and saw that Gasher was gone. Now the man at the controls was Engineer Bob from Charlie the Choo Choo. Stop, Eddie screamed. For Christ's sake, stop. I can't, Eddie. The world has moved on, and I can't stop. I must move on with it. And as the shadow of the dozer fell over the rose, the blade tore through one of the posts holding up the sign. Eddie saw coming soon had changed to coming now and realized that the man at the controls wasn't Engineer Bob either. It was Roland. Oof. So first Gasher, then the idea that Engineer Bob, then Roland. I wonder if that means something going in that order and why them. That's we just kind of talked about it. Why Gasher?
Yeah.
Like I would have pictured like Blaine. Maybe,
yeah,
like a something like that for Eddie, or Henry would have been one that I would have expected with Eddie.
Yeah,
not just I don't know why, but Gasher just doesn't seem like it fits with him. And then Engineer Bob kind of makes sense with. It
was
story.
Pretty effective though, because wasn't Eddie the one that had the thought after Gasher took Jake and Roland chased? He's like, I don't think we're ever going to see each other again. Like, wasn't he the one that had that thought where
I don't remember that.
Yeah, where he's like, we're never going to be back as a group again.
I thought it was Susanna who had the feeling that she felt that, and then she kept it to herself. I didn't think that it was Eddie that said that.
Or I think it was a thought, not spoken, but I thought it was Eddie that had that thought where it's like we're not. This is it. We're done. We're not going to see each other again. So again, I can kind of see it for sure. I think Engineer Bob's the one that actually trips me out a little bit more. I just don't find that as effective on Eddie. Like that's more of a Jake thing. Yeah. Because that's been Jake's nightmare was the whole Blaine and Charlie and all that stuff. But Gasher, yeah, I could even see Oi having nightmares about Gasher.
Yeah, probably
tried to punt him off the bridge. Yeah. Well, just on the bridge when he went trying to like fucking not drop kick him, but I always think of Anchorman when dude punts Baxter off the bridge.
Baxter. And then my next note is just what is it with Eddie's issue with Roland still? Like still doesn't trust him after all of this. He's still like having these nightmares and stuff like that.
Definitely an interesting thought process here.
Yeah.
Psychologically, dreams.
Yeah.
Or your subconscious or whatever. So.
Absolutely. And then this is the first time the rose has been brought up since before Jake's drawing in Wastelands. Like, they haven't really discussed it or talked about it, but we had a whole big section about Jake going and finding the vacant lot in the rose.
And he shared the story with everyone.
But
so,
nothing came of it. Nothing was,
but a lot's been happening since then.
I mean, you're not wrong. It's just that it's just kind of, like, okay, King's bringing it back to the forefront for us, so we got to remember that.
Yeah. And then my note, it's strange that we don't know much about the rose, but we do know it seems very important, and this proves how well King has done because it got me very nervous reading this.
Even though we clearly know it's a dream.
Yeah, even though it's a dream, and even though we've dropped this storyline for a long time, we haven't revisited the rose in a long time. So I think King Yeah, he's sold us that something is big with this rose here. So let's move on to subchapter 10. So Eddie wakes up in the breakdown lane of the turnpike, gasping for breath. He is sure that he had to have screamed, but Susanna and Jake were still sound asleep. Roland wasn't asleep. Roland sat calmly on the far side of the dead campfire, cleaning his guns and looking at Eddie. He said, "Bad dreams, not a question," and Eddie agreed. Roland asked if it was his brother. Eddie shook his head. He then asked if it was the tower then, in the field of roses, and his face was impassive, but there was an eagerness in his voice, as there always was when when the talk of the tower came up. He had once called Roland a tower junkie, and Roland had not denied it. Eddie said, "Not this time," and Roland asked what, and Eddie said, "Cold." Roland agreed and was glad there was no autumn rain, as it was an evil thing that was to be avoided. He asked again about Eddie's dream. Eddie asked if Roland would ever betray them. Roland said that no man can say for sure, and admitted that he had played the betrayer more than once before, to his shame. But he does not think that but he does say he thinks those days are over, and he thinks that if he was to betray any of them, even Oy, he would be betraying himself. Eddie asks if he would betray his quest, and Roland said emphatically no, he would never renounce the tower. So I'll pause there. Roland not getting much sleep is a further clue to me that that he is not just putting the story off for no reason. It is weighing heavily on him, and we're seeing multiple signs now. This is like, I can't wait to see what a really good actor is going to do in this section for Roland, because there's a lot to try to convey it. And I mean, have we once seen Roland not sleep outside of defensiveness with Detta? Like
where he was on guard and he knew something was up.
Yeah, but this is not that. This is
every other time, even when he was going insane, it's all right, time to turn in.
Yeah, and he can also go to sleep and wake up so damn fast that I don't think sleep is ever really a danger for him.
No.
So even with Detta, there was the time that he put himself mostly to sleep enough to trick her, into doing her thing, because he's like, I think Detta will come back.
He's I'm going to be ready for her.
And then he once she whatever. So sleep is not whatever. So the fact that he's not sleeping, I think, is very, very, very telling.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Roland admitting that he's been a betrayer before is startling. Again, reminding us that he is not a perfect hero. He's not a Superman, Boy Scout kind of character.
No. Let's remember Tull.
It's been a few books and a
while.
lot of years for some people when they're first time reading this that's something to remind us, is that
and we haven't seen
is something.
Outside of Jake, we haven't really seen him betray in our story either. Hax the cook, that was more of he liked Hax, but Hax was doing the wrong thing.
That was his duty kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You can always point to duty. Tull, he was being attacked. There's not very many times we've seen him do some pretty shitty things. I think Jake is the only betrayal that we've really seen. Yeah. So this is one of those low-key scenes I cannot wait to see on screen. These small moments are the ones that really resonate with me in the book. Yes, I love the big things like Blaine and some of these big things that we've seen and things that we will see in the future. But these small moments, these are what I live
for,
man.
They're going to be huge.
I can't wait to see this scene where, Eddie and Roland are talking about betrayal and stuff.
Yeah.
So then also interesting insight about how Roland has viewed himself as a betrayer. It's just interesting because, I think so many people in our world, even if they were, most wouldn't admit it.
Or they would
try to justify
rationalize it.
Yeah, rationalize, justify, where it's just whatever. But Roland just
well, I had to. X, Y, and Z made it so that I had to.
Yeah, but Roland, he's just like, no, I've played betrayer.
I've done it
a number of times. And he tells him, I don't think
not once.
And he's like, I don't think I'll do it again. I don't think I can without betraying myself. But yes, I played that role before. It's just very matter of fact, and it's I don't know, it's startling almost. It's like getting slapped a little bit, where it's like, wait, did he just say that?
Really
I remember the first time I read this, where I stopped and went back and up a few lines and read again. I'm like, did I ever misread that? It's like, oh my God, no, that's what he said.
Oh shit,
that's very, very strange.
Yeah.
Let's see. Roland asked again about his dream, and Eddie told him, I'm sorry, let me hit the chat too. Baraki said, let's remember how Roland had to turn off his love for Jake in the dark under the mountain. That hurt him deeply to do, but he had to for the tower. I would say that, did Roland have love for Jake early on? Because I felt like he was keeping him very much at arm's length in that first book. Because remember there was even the internal monologue where it's always the boy. He never thought him as Jake. He thought him as the boy. He was always trying to keep him at a distance.
I think the demon in the ring, not the speaking demon, it's the what is it, the Oracle? I think that's where it kind of flipped the switch that he had to save this boy.
Yeah.
He didn't have to.
I think he had a responsibility, but I guess for me, I've never interpreted love. Not to say that he doesn't have it. I guess I've just never interpreted it that way in the first book. So I think that, after the fact, as we come back to Jake in book 3, certainly. But I don't know. That's an interesting discussion about book 1 for sure. Oh yeah, I guess he says he admitted to himself that he loved the boy, which is the guy with the Man in Black wanted. I think maybe even the Man in Black thing is maybe why he was so on guard. But yeah. So Roland again asked about his dream, and Eddie told him the whole thing, and he left nothing out, and asked if it meant he still didn't trust, and asked if it meant that he still didn't trust Roland. And Roland asked, "Is this the ology of the psyche, the Kabbalah I've heard you and Susanna speaking of?" Eddie agrees it was. Roland says that it was bullshit. Dreams either mean nothing or everything, and even when they mean everything, they came from another level of the tower, and not all not all are sent by friends. Eddie asks that someone is fucking with his head, and Roland says that it is possible, but Eddie still needs to watch him, and he bears watching, as Eddie knows. Eddie says he trusts Roland, and the awkwardness that he shows while saying it proves the words true. Eddie wonders how he ever thought Roland is a robot. He is short on imagination, but he has feelings. Roland says one thing bothers him about the dream. Eddie guesses correctly that it's the bulldozer, as it is a threat to the Rose, and he tells Roland Jake said it was safe. Roland said that it was safe in that time, but that does not mean it will continue to thrive. He said that if the sign is right and the construction starts, Eddie says there are other worlds than these, almost answering Roland's thought process there. Roland said some things only exist in one where and when, and they must be and that we must protect the Rose at all costs. Eddie asks if he thinks that it is another door, maybe one that opens to the tower, and Roland says that he thinks that it may be the tower itself, and if it is destroyed, and he trails off. Eddie did not sleep much that night.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, no shit. That's a heavy conversation. I also want to point out, I don't know if I even put a note down for it, but I really love that Roland basically says, you need to watch me.
Yeah.
Like, he did that when his mind was splitting.
You do have a note about it.
He said it when the mind was splitting, where it's like, he gave his weapons up and stuff. I can't
even
be
like
trusted.
his knife and everything.
Yeah, but like this, again, it's kind of like that, where he's like, yeah, I played the Betrayer before. Like, as a reader, you're like startled a bit, and then like now here he's like kind of kind of waving his hand away at a lot of what Eddie's saying, like, oh, whatever. It's like this could all just be tricks, but you should still watch me anyway. It's like, oh, wait.
Huh?
Yeah, again, as a reader,
and then he bears watching and everything. Like
as a
that.
reader, I remember like, that's another spot I stopped. I'm like, wait, what did he just say?
Yeah,
I had to have misread that.
It's not Roland. It's not Roland just being like, hey, for your peace of mind, keep an eye on me. I won't do anything wrong, but keep an eye on me. No, what he says is, I fucked up and I betrayed people. I might do it again. You better watch me. It's like, wait, no. Like,
yeah.
Aren't you supposed to be like, no, I don't want to do that?
Yeah. So I love Roland trying to say psychology as well. That's just great. I love Roland trying to master English. It kills me.
Yeah. I'm honestly surprised that Eddie told him about his dream and didn't leave out any details. Usually they're keeping each other in the dark and keeping secrets.
I even misread that line. Even this time doing prep, I was like, when it says that he left nothing out, I thought it said he left something out. And I'm like, okay, wait, what did he leave out? And I went and reread it. I'm like, oh, wait. He literally told him the whole thing.
I said it's just a change from Wastelands where they were keeping stuff from each other all the time and everything like that, especially drawing in the 3's even worse.
Yeah.
So it's just, absolutely, like, floored that they're being open and honest with each other.
Yeah. I also love that Roland, after saying that he would not forsake his mission, still tells him he needs to be watched, because that's an interesting thing too, because he's also saying that in light of the fact that Eddie asked him about the mission. Yeah. And he's like, I'm not. Like, there's no ambiguity about anything when it comes to the mission. He's like, no, I'll never forsake the tower.
Yeah.
Like, there's not even a doubt. You don't even have to worry about that. But he's like, but I do still bear watching, because I think that's then folding back to the first part where it's like,
I can't be trusted.
Yeah, I've betrayed before. I'm a slasher. I must be stopped.
Yeah, exactly.
Another Hot Fuzz reference. 2 Hot Fuzz references in this episode. I love it.
How can this be for the greater good? Shut it!
It's a brilliant movie.
Love that
brilliant movie. And then my last note here. Holy fuck, the Rose might be the tower, and it might be in danger. Holy fuck. That's
Yeah, also
I mean, I know Roland's he's not speaking from a definitive place of it is the
he's like, I feel like it might be.
It could be. It's like, oh, whoa, hold the fuck up here. What?
Like, that's a big bombshell to drop on us. And then the very next part, he says, Eddie's like, oh, well, it's no big deal. We have other worlds than these. And Roland's like, actually, important things only exist in one.
Yeah.
One, where, and when. So it's like, oh, so there's not just more roses that we can protect and everything like that. There is the rose, the singular one, and everything like that. So it's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
We just took this, like, 2 situation and dialed it up to an 11.
Yeah.
You know?
Indeed. Let me see here. We are, I'm trying to think, because did you have any other, spoiler questions?
I have 2 for spoilers, and one of them actually will be a little bit of a discussion.
Okay, let's stop here. We prepped to go further, but
good call.
Last episode we didn't have a lot, but we had a couple small notes, but we had no time to get to them. So I want to be a little bit more mindful. I think in my mind about 10 minutes before we have to stop is probably about the time we should be looking at for spoilers, if we have spoilers to talk about. So
sounds good.
So let's it's been a minute since I've pushed this button.
Warning, spoilers ahead. Warning, spoilers ahead. Warning, spoilers ahead.
Also, I am going to just pause and say we did not prep to end here, and guess what we ended on again?
Still another cliffhanger.
Quite a fucking bombshell moment of like, what the fuck, dude? So
I mean, it's not as bad as where we were originally planning to end.
No, it's not, but yeah. So let's move. So we're in the spoiler section now. If you have not finished the entire series, go ahead and cry off. Come join us when you finish the entire series. But this is now spoiler section, so beware. Okay, so my only one I have, Roland saying the past rearranges itself is a very interesting thing in the larger context of the series. I'm not sure that King really knew about the entire loop aspect of the storytelling when he wrote this, but I think it's very fitting to that structure in retrospect, because I feel like maybe he wrote it as more of like a time's weird in this world, time slips. There's like there's all this weirdness to this world. I think this might just be part of that, but knowing the whole series and knowing the whole element of like. And maybe does that even change the whole idea? But we've talked about before, the loop starts at that one point, and we always talked about
how
the
past is in motion.
And we've always talked about how the past before that is kind of immutable. Like there is no repeating of that.
That's not true then.
And so, is there? It makes me wonder: is there even any divine intervention with the horn, or is this just one of those?
That's literally my spoiler discussion note here: is the horn. If the past is fluid, does that mean Roland can truly break the cycle? Is there something that is being done? Is there a higher power at work that is trying to get Roland to break the cycle? Like you've had this theory for
years,
over a decade now, that Flag is the catalyst. The Flag is the one trying to get Roland to break the cycle. It's where the whole the Flag is the real good guy and everything like that comes from. Is that we need to break Roland's cycle and everything. Is there actually something at work here that is trying to make that happen?
I've always
or
thought
is there
so.
something that is trying to keep Roland in the cycle?
Yeah, I've always thought
what
so.
If
but
Roland
this
has to be stuck in the cycle for the tower not to fall?
Yeah.
There's a hypothesis that I'm working on along those lines that it's just like there's so many things that have to go wrong for Roland to end up at the tower, for Roland to end up alone at the tower, and everything. So it's just like it's kind of like just like, well, why does this keep happening? If this isn't the first time through, why does it keep happening? If there's a higher power at work, and Roland hints at it earlier in this sections that we covered today to Susanna, there's he even says it right here to Eddie. There's messages being sent in dreams, and they're not always from friends, but that means that sometimes they are from friends.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is that there is a higher power at work. There's also a higher evil power at work.
Yeah.
That is trying to keep you from the tower and one that's trying to get you to the tower. But what if the evil one is the one trying to get you away from the tower? What if that's what kills the tower? What if that's what brings the tower down? Is that its last defender is killed?
Yeah.
Or its last defender cries off? Not even killed. What if there's a cycle where Roland dies and he wakes up with a start in the desert? What if it's that Roland is the one keeping the tower from falling and Flag is trying to bring it down by stopping Roland, by getting Roland to cry off?
Yeah.
There's no proof either way with either one of our hypotheses, but this right here, the past is rearranging itself, is fascinating to think about with multiple different hypotheses in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very interesting. But yeah, I've never caught on to this before. I mean, I've read this I don't know how many times, but it's these deep dives that I sometimes catch these little nuggets where I've just breezed by that every time I've ever read it, where it's like the past is in motion, and it's like, holy shit, like the implications that has to the larger conversation of the story is insane. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and Alan says the question of if he can move past the cycle is the end. That's why we cling to the clues in other books and characters, but good God, I hope not. David says, I thought I saw Stephen King on a podcast say that it's rolling, just doesn't drop the kid he can get out of the time loop.
Yeah, he did say that in the last couple of years where he was on an interview sometime where he basically said, that's Roland's damnation, is dropping Jake. That's the point when... That's the point. Like, you know, there's a lot of points, but that is the point. That's the crux point where, like, Roland's failure, damnation or salvation lays on that moment, which is so early in the story that...
Well, I mean, Flag says it is that or is it the Oracle that says it is that while you travel with the boy, the man in black carries your soul in his pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that kind of thing. Alan says if he can not sacrifice Jake and stop seeking the tower. It's interesting that we always lump those two together. What if it's one and exclusive? What if it's not a matter of dropping Jake? What if it is seeking... I know that seeking the tower, that's the reason why he drops Jake.
Yeah.
But is there anything saying that he can't save Jake and still seek the tower?
Oh.
He may not be able to catch the men in black and get closer.
Yeah.
But could he still seek the tower and save Jake?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
That's an interesting
I think
thought.
you could do both, but I think where his rationale is that if I don't drop this kid, I lose the man in black. That's my only thread to the tower at this point. So that's kind of it. I don't think there's a larger implication to child. It's the classic Superman Spider-Man thing, right? Mm-hmm. Villain holding the two people, like which one are you gonna save type thing. Like it's that kind of thing ultimately. But I think it's just in that moment. I don't think it's a larger thing. I don't think he has to forsake the tower, save Jake, forsake the tower, and be redeemed. No, I think from what King's saying, dropping the kid is where he damns himself. Mm-hmm. And I do think that, and I don't know, maybe even the tower has a completely different like inside for him if he doesn't kill Jake. Maybe that's the...
Isn't saving Jake redemption for that, though? Isn't that what we talk about in Wastelands, is that he says he redeems himself by rescuing Jake from Dutch Hill and drawing Jake into the world like he should have done? Or is it the fact that he dropped Jake at all? So what you're saying is that everything for Roland is decided in book 1.
That's what King said is the ultimate crux moment for Roland is dropping Jake or not. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean...
So we have 6 books that are...
And even when you look at the rest of... Well, when it comes... I mean, the rest of the story has to exist. Like, you still have the element of saving the tower and all that, but Roland's soul being redeemed comes down to drop... And the thing is, when we look through it, you can't blame his mom on him. That was a hex, right? Even Susan dying, that wasn't a direct... thing. And also I don't want to get into like puritanical bullshit, but also you can't necessarily say that Susan was innocent. She was part of she got roped into their Ka-Tet and stuff there. She wasn't innocent. Jake is an innocent fucking child. Like that's a bridge beyond what so I'm just trying to like quantify Roland's past sins. Letting this fucking innocent child drop, that's a bit beyond anything else he had done. So I could kind of see where King's coming from, where it's like, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that Roland is the bad guy with what you're saying for letting Jake drop, but Flag, who murdered Jake, is clear. Well, no, it comes down to not even that, like he's a bad guy, but it comes down to like his damnation, because ultimately that's the loop is where, and I don't think King's ever said this, so I think it is still up to interpretation, but I've always interpreted the loop is damnation. You're being judged.
Right, so how does Flag trying to break the cycle and being aware of the cycle fit that then? That's what I'm saying. Why is Flag a higher power?
He's tortured in it because he knows what's going on.
Right, but doesn't he deserve to be?
I mean, one might say that. Doesn't mean he's not going to try to get out of it.
I mean, he murdered a child. We're talking about Roland choosing to let Jake drop is his damnation, but Flag pushed Jake in front of the Cadillac. So, I mean, he murdered Jake just as much as Roland did.
Yeah, but he's going to try to escape his damnation the same as Roland would. I mean, is
Roland trying to? Though?
No, because he doesn't understand it. His mind's getting erased.
See, that's what's interesting for me is that it's one's aware of their damnation and one isn't.
Which I think is there's whatever higher power is judging. I think is being more merciful to Roland, because I'd rather not know personally. I'd rather be in Roland's spot than Flag's spot. If you're Flag and you're repeating all the time, dude, you're gonna go mad. Like that's like who's the Greek one that has to push the rock up the thing for all eternity? Yeah. Like that's that kind of thing. Like there comes a moment where it's just like, and I mean that's where you get into like in reality, right? When they talk about how torturous like isolated someone in prison, like putting him in the hole is like basically mental torture and stuff. Because there's just an element of like, it's always the same. You're just in darkness all the time, and like it drives you mad. Like, and I think that's Flag. So I'm not getting into a thing of like if Flag is being judged, because I think Flag is being judged too. He's being judged harsher because he's being made aware of his loop. So
that's an interesting thought. Is that's Flag's further damnation past Roland's. Roland's a 5. Shame on you for doing this, but Flag's a 7 for killing.
They're also connected too, right? It's two sides of the same coin. So, and I think that's why Flag is like trying to get Roland to forsake early on, because it's like you need to forsake, because if you forsake, this shit ends, then I will be released. I won't be going through this all the time.
But he killed Jake already. That's how Jake ended up at the way station.
Yeah, but if he gets
he can't undo his damnation because he's already done the act for which he's damned.
Or if he stops Roland or kills Roland, the loop stops. Because I think it's this weird twinner thing where they're connected in a way, like to where they're.
I just don't understand how Roland's damnation is going to stop, even if Flag convinces him to cry off the tower. Flag's not being punished then. Flag should be punished. If he's damned, he should be punished. So maybe it's something. Maybe that's Flag's damnation, is trying to get Roland to do an impossible task. Is that Roland physically, emotionally, mentally cannot cry off the tower. And it's not his damnation is that he has to try to get Roland to do it, but he has to keep dying over and over and over again at Mordred's mouth because he can't get Roland to cry off because he did murder Jake.
And the other thing too, Baraki points out, Flag's also an agent of the Crimson King. I don't think I don't think putting him in the same realm of Roland and Judgment is even a thing. Flag might be outside of this. He's part of the other side, so we don't even know if he's being judged. Like I think taking because Roland's being judged and then saying that has to apply to Flag as well, that might be a mistake because being an agent of the Crimson King, I don't think that Pennywise is going to be judged either. I think there's
why is Roland being judged then?
Because he's a he's the line of Arthur Eld. He's supposed to be a knight and a gunslinger. So
because he's a gunslinger, he's being judged that way. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's how I've always.
But what backs that up?
Why else would he? I mean, isn't it even one of the lines in that end point when it's like he understands his damnation in those couple seconds when he understands what's going on?
Does it use the word damnation? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I ultimately I believe so. But either way, that's how I mean it is. If nothing else, it is a damnation. He's luckily he doesn't understand that it's happening, but he is repeating constantly. That is a damnation. Like there's no, to me, there's no two ways about that.
Damnation implies that it's a judgment's been wreaked and that's his damnation.
Yeah, and
what if he's not being judged? What if he's been given a task to save the tower in every level?
And I think that because he ultimately, again, and there's all different interpretations, but ultimately I think he's damned because he does save the tower and he continues on. His obsession is what's continuing his.
But you said that Stephen King said his damnation is dropping Jake, which happens in book 1. He continues after saving Agosiento and stopping the breakers and saving the tower in book 7. But if he's damned in book 1, according to King.
Yeah.
So that puts a hole in your theory. There is no justification of saying, well, it's only after he saves the tower and continuing on that proves that he's a true tower junkie.
Because ultimately
he was damned in book 1.
Yeah, that's where his damnation starts. But I do believe that because it comes down to choosing the people he loves over the tower, and he never has made that right choice. And the worst of it all is dropping Jake. So there, when he's with Susanna, it's like, hey, let's go through with the fucking Deans. They're on the other side of this door, the Dean brothers. Like that's his point. That's his last chance to like choose love, not the tower. The tower is now safe. You know it's safe. Go through that fucking door. Be with the people you love. The cycle would be over at that point, because that's what ultimately goes down to. He chose the tower over Susan. He chose the tower over all of his friends at Jericho Hill. Like he's constantly choosing.
But the Crimson King is still alive
and trapped.
For how long?
Been there for a long time.
Mordred's still alive. There are unresolved things that happen after the door with Susanna. But we're out of time, so we need to table this and discuss this further. Because I'm not convinced that Roland's damnation is sealed. It doesn't make sense that it's sealed with Jake, but somehow sealed again in book 7 after refusing to go through the door with Susanna. It doesn't make sense how it can be sealed 2 times. It's one or the other, or it's neither.
No, I think just because he's damned at a point doesn't mean he doesn't have chances for redemption. I think his last chance for redemption is that door. Because again, love over tower. I think that's what I've always interpreted it as. You've always chosen the tower over the people and the people you love. You need to go the opposite way. And his last chance of doing that was at that door, where it's like, hey, the tower's safe. You've been told that the beams are going to heal themselves. Go through this door. Be with the people you love. Don't fucking go with your obsession.
Okay.
So yeah. That is that'll be it for this episode. I'm glad we did hit the spoilers, because that's a big one, man. I've never I don't know how I've never caught that little thing there, but good stuff. Yeah, so we will be back in a fortnight for the roundtable, the next roundtable. We'll catch up on all the news, because we didn't do a lot of news last time because of the went through the keyhole discussion. We'll catch up on everything that's been going on, and then we'll have a book club or a roundtable 2 weeks after that as well, and then we'll be back on where the book clubs are the second episode into October. So if you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on any podcasting service of your choice. You could stream us on Spotify or not Stitcher anymore, Audible, all those kind of fun places. Join us on the live streams here at youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. We had a lot of good conversation here. If you want to find the show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com. There's no show notes for this episode, but if you want to find the show notes or the links to all things Dark Tower Palaver, do it over there at darktowerpalaver.com. If you want to support the show, do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
Best way is through email. darktowerpalaver@gmail.com is our old email. We're going to be phasing that out here soon. And then our new email is show@darktowerpalaver.com. And then our social media is at darktowerpod. That's at darktowerpod. Our Facebook is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word with no spaces. And then check out our merchandise at tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver.
Yes, indeed. So we'll see you in a fortnight for a roundtable. And we'll sign off, so as do, by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone in the chat, thank you all for joining us. Thanks for all the awesome notes and conversation. You guys are always a wonderful part of the show. We'll be back in a little bit. Oh, let me grab the link for Geekery Abides if you'd like to join us over there, where we are talking the next 2 episodes of Ahsoka, episode 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So if you want to join us over there, if not, we'll see you in a fortnight.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.